Welcome to March of 2026. This is a month that's very heavy in the Aries energy, very heavy on that Neptune Virgo axis because of the eclipses. I'm going to break it down for each of the rising signs so you guys know what to expect throughout the rest of the month. I do apologize for being a few days late. For those of you who are new here, my name is Jackie. I'm a Western Whole House Evolutionary Astrologer, and I'm very glad you're with me today. If you like or are into my style or the information that I'm providing to you, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, all that good stuff. And if you wish to work with me privately, you can check for all the details down in the box below. But let's get started with our Aries rising friends. I just kind of want to jump into it because I feel like there's a lot to discuss. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at everybody's respective chart. Aries risings for you, I'm going to start at the beginning, but I do want to just say that this is not a surface month for you at all. It's just not. It's very internal. It's very karmic. It's very foundational. Nearly everything is happening that's preparing you for a new multi-year identity cycle. There's a lot going on in your first house. There are so many energies. By the middle of by the middle of the month, you will have, for those of you who are Aries risings, your rising sign, you're going to have Kronos, Neptune, the Sun, Saturn, Venus, Eris, and Chiron all together in did I say, yeah, Saturn in there. Did I say Mars? I meant Saturn. Mars is going to be moving into that Pisces energy the first week of the month as well. So it's really going to be highlighting with Mercury in there, as well as the North Node Vesta and Pallas Athena in your 12th house. You have a lot of energies lighting up your internal world as well. So what is this actually going to look like for you? You know, just taking the month on the whole, this is very much like a 12th house Pisces overload for you, right? Which is this governs the subconscious. 12th house is also very connected to your hidden grief, any sort of self-undoing patterns, spirituality, isolation, the end of cycles. But in a more practical way, the 12th house is the house of the nurse. It's the house of the hospital, the drug rehab, the rehabilitation center, any kind of rehabilitation center. It's about unconditionally loving and giving. It's very connected to, when I say spirituality, the 12th house, the veil is very thin between worlds, right? So for that reason, 12th house rules tarot, rules Reiki, meditation, crystals, anything that's very spiritual in that realm. It also rules illusions and it rules sleep as well. So focusing more on a psychological perspective, you know, with multiple energies in that space, activating that 12th house, you're really going to be dealing with everything that you usually suppress, Aries, to be honest with you. So a lot of you are going to be dealing with old anger that you never fully express. So don't be surprised if these things are kind of rising up to the surface. Fatigue from being strong, always needing to have it together, grief that's been sort of lingering underneath the surface that you've been putting off dealing with, having to do with that friendship, that relationship, whatever it is, that thing from your past. Also, spiritual confusion can hit the scene in this energy, and resentments that you buried can rise to the surface. None of this is a bad thing, guys, right? I mean, it's whatever's rising to the surface is rising for you to deal with. Now, with that Mars energy in the 12th, this is very, very important for you, right? Because Mars does rule your chart. It's connected to your eighth house originally as well, right? Mars is the modern ruler of Aries. A lot of people still consider him also the ruler of Scorpio. Many of us don't believe that anymore, but I like to throw it out there in case you believe that as well. It doesn't really matter, right? But the eighth house is connected to trauma and intimacy. And when Mars moves through your 12th house, anger turns inward, right? Because remember, the 12th house is behind the red veil, it's behind the curtains, it's the unseen, right? So anger turns inward, energy feels lower, your motivation can feel kind of weird, kind of foggy. You might feel invisible. You might feel withdrawn. You might just feel like you don't want to deal with people. But this is not a weakness that you're experiencing. This is detox, Aries. Like it's a detox that you're dealing with because you're clearing psychic debris before stepping into something that's much bigger. Okay. Now you are dealing with this the Virgo lunar eclipse in that sixth house. Once we hit mid-month, and that sixth house is work, it's health, it's daily systems. So that sixth house is work routines, health habits, stress patterns, responsibilities and obligations, service, your body under pressure, right? So it's like mental, physical, and emotional health. When I say work routines, it rules your colleagues or people who work for you. It rules your day-to-day work environment, your literal environment, right? Now, with the South Node lunar eclipse here, it's really showing some sort of unsustainable habits that are going to be manifesting here. You know, psychologically, you could just be feeling like can't keep running on this level of stress, right? You're going to feel your body is talking to you. You're going to realize that you've been functioning on overdrive, on adrenaline, right? So this could feel like a burnout realization where you're just like, I'm shot. I can't do this anymore. Or you're feeling some sort of work structure shifting. For a lot of you, this could be a wake-up call in the health area where you're realizing you've been dealing with a lot of anxiety that's getting the better of you, or some sort of health situation that's getting the better of you. And you're going to be very willing to let go of hyper productivity, right? Because you guys tend to be very, very productive individuals. You're always going, you're always going. So you've been using activity, though, to avoid stillness a lot of the times. And this eclipse is going to force the stillness. It dismantles the illusion that constantly moving, that constant motion equals strength, right? And that's what the eclipse is going to be is going to be realizing for you. And I just want you to understand this is going to be very powerful the whole mid-month, right? The energies do not understand the man-made calendar. So I just want you to understand the middle of the month. Now, the Pisces solar eclipse happening in the 12th house, this is a new subconscious chapter for you. Solar eclipses plant seeds. And in your 12th, the seed is very invisible at first, right? Because whatever's happening in the 12th house is invisible because it is in the subconscious. So this can manifest as starting therapy, spiritually waking up. And what does that mean? Realizing that maybe you've been focusing on the wrong things for too long. This month can also bring a period of retreat or withdrawal, or a desire to go on a retreat, or just sort of want to be very pensive. You're going to be processing forgiveness in this realm as well, letting go of the hidden enemy. And I'm going to tell you something. In this energy, it's most likely going to be yourself, you know, realizing yourself as hidden enemy, you know, because psychologically, this eclipse is saying that you have to rest before that next battle. And so how do you do that? Well, your ego is going to be softening. It's not the death of your ego, but it's a refinement of your ego. There's humbleness involved in this. There's self-honesty involved in this, but it's deeply personal. So it's not like these realizations are going to be happening through other people. They're going to totally be happening through you and just occurring to you. That's the best way for me to put it, right? With the 12th house energy, it could come to you in your sleep. It could come to you as an epiphany. It could just rise from the surface. And it literally could just be randomly doing anything in the middle of a day. And just this idea or this thought hits you. This realization hits you. Now, we're still dealing with the Saturn conjunct Neptune in your first house. Started talking about that last week. This month, it really starts this identity reconstruction that I feel like I've been talking about, particularly for the past couple of months. And this is the defining influence that's going to really rule your energy over the next few years. And what is this first house? It has to do, so where's the redefinition? Having to do with your body, your identity, your personality, how it is that you actually look, right? But that first house is also the path that you're walking on. So there could be a shift in your identity as far as having autonomy and agency over your life, how you sort of step out into the world, right? How you actually function out in the world, right? That path that you're walking on. And Saturn in this energy brings as Saturn always says, responsibility, gravity, maturity, boundaries, like, hurry up and wait, right? Saturn is very much about that, right? Because he wants you to get going on things, but he wants you to do it in a certain way because he doesn't like to do things twice, right? So it could feel heavy, it could feel restricted, you could feel boundaries, but it's the kind of thing, the kind of energy that really responds very well to responsibilities. Now, he is working with Neptune, who's very much about illusions, right? Neptune is about dissolving things. He's very spiritual, obviously, because he is the ruler of the 12th house, but he also is very connected to confusion and idealism, right? Idealizing certain things, right? So when we throw these two guys together in that first house on top of everything else that I mentioned at the beginning of your segment that's hanging out in that first house, there are a few possible manifestations. Some of you may be experiencing an identity crisis. You might be like, where am I going exactly? I'm doing this. I did this yesterday. I'm doing this today. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, but am I going to be doing the same thing in 3 years? Really looking at that and perhaps feeling a little like, I think I might need to make some sort of change, gain some sort of clarity at the very least. So a lot of you are going to be looking into a career redirection. If you're still working, there could certainly be some physical changes that are going on here. You could be feeling like your body is doing a little like jammy jam, right? Having to do with maybe your immune system. And I'm only saying this because I'm looking at your chart. You have Uranus in the last decan in the late degrees of that Taurus energy in the second house. Second house is ruled the thyroid, and you have Uranus in there, which can bring like sudden change. And then Chiron is going to be dipping into Taurus for the summer, then going back into Aries. But even throughout the rest of his stint in Aries, which he'll be there all in until the end of 2027, he's going to be very late in that last decan. So he's already got one foot in that second house. And Chiron, where he's the wounded warrior, it's physical, mental, and emotional, right? So having to do with that second house, which rules our internal organs, it rules our thyroid. Uranus in there is very connected to inflammation and you sort of like change in levels, right? So, you know, especially for those ladies, who are like, 40s, 50s, 60s, if you're feeling like very tired, middle of the day, if you're feeling extra sensitive to cold, if you feel like your hair is thinning or it's falling out or anything like that, you want to get your thyroid checked, get that TSH level checked if you are feeling any of these things, but it could certainly be that physical changes, feeling like it's harder to lose weight, feeling like you're losing too much weight, right? Any end of the spectrum. But you're redefining regardless what it is to feel strength, what all of that means, okay? Becoming quieter, but more powerful. Feeling like you have a lot more agency, a lot more sovereignty over your life. And, just going back to the health thing, if that is your situation, right? And it could be any situation that's connected to the internal health of your body. The change that you would be able to make is actually going to be very, very good. Okay. So that's something that I just want you to keep in mind. Okay. This is not a negative thing. It could be a little stressful while you're trying to make the change, but especially with Jupiter and Cancer is so exalted in the fourth, which has to do with just our overall health in general. Jupiter in the fourth house is actually quite good for your health. So, if you're dealing with any sort of health issue, I want you to know that you have a lot of good energy on your side to be perfectly fine. But it means that you might have to make some changes. And again, with that second house rules food, it rules your mouth. So you might be like, hey, guess what? I need to go anti-inflammatory diet. I need to change the way I'm eating. I need to eat less. I need to eat more, right? It rules anything that you put in your mouth. Maybe you need to drink less. Maybe you need to do whatever it is a little less that you would be ingesting, anything like that. But from a psychological perspective, Aries, you're moving from being very reactive, that very reactive Aries energy, to being a lot more conscious, right? Less impulsive, a lot more intentional. You're not about proving anything. Everything that you're doing has straight up purpose, right? Saturn demands structure, so you're really feeding Saturn with that energy. Neptune dissolves illusions. So illusions about who you thought you were are dissolving and something a lot more authentic is forming. So there's nothing negative about that, right? It's you're just becoming a lot more authentic. Now, Jupiter does station direct in your fourth house, right? He goes direct on the 10th. We want to say, really he's going to be in that post shadow for probably the 2 weeks after, but you're going to start to feel some shifts in that arena, which would be the arena of family, of ancestry, of emotional safety, some sort of living situation, your inner foundation. Jupiter retrograde likely brought some sort of for some of you straight up real estate delays, emotional review, reflecting on family and what family means. A lot of you may have been thinking a lot about your own upbringing. A lot of you may have been visiting some sort of like childhood themes, things that were relevant in your early environment and applying them to your life today. But now when Jupiter goes direct mid-month, let's just say mid-month, just to be fair, having to do with the pre and post shadow, emotional expansion resumes, right? Where you feel like you're a lot more clear-eyed in your ability to expand yourself. Healing around any sort of family situation, be it, between you and a spouse, your children, or even if everything's super with them, maybe some sort of real estate issue, anything, any sort of home matter will move forward. And because of that, your security is going to increase because the fourth house is very connected to our security. Now, not our financial security so much, but more our emotional security, like feeling like, yes, everything in life is okay, right? So as you dissolve externally, your inner foundations are going to be strengthened here. And this prevents the identity shift from feeling so destabilizing. It's not, right? It's, you're likely going to be vibing this thing where you feel who you're becoming, right? Um, you might not know where you're going to land. And so there could be some question marks in that space, but you do know where at least where you belong, which is good. So now other things to consider here, we do have this Uranus again, like I mentioned before, 27 and 28 degrees by the end of the month in that second house. So your values are still evolving, money, income structure, your self-worth. They're in their final liberation phase before he permanently dips into Gemini next month. So you may change some sort of financial strategy, the way that you deal with finances, or let go of some sort of income that's tied to your identity, redefining what security actually means to you. These are all things, it's restructuring, right? In that second house, having to do with just a restructuring in that space, right? As with Uranus in those last degrees. So you may change again the way you eat, changes in your finances. Could even just be a change in your belief system, which happens though, right? When we're making changes in our in our finances and we're making changes in how we eat, of course that's gonna impact our foundational belief system, right? Because those are big things in our life. Now, Pluto in Aquarius, obviously still a thing for the next 20 years. He's at 5 degrees. He's working with part of fortune in your 11th house. I'm just looking. Not really posing anything that we need to be concerned about here, but friendships, networks, all of these things are transforming for the long term. So what I like about this for you guys is you're outgrowing any sort of performative alliances where it's like I'm your friend or I'm your whatever you go-to person based on what I do for you or what you do for them, right? And there's more integrity involved. Any sort of ego-based groups, again, whether it has to do with people you hang with in your neighborhood, just your old friends, people at work, whatever. Anything that's ego-based, that's competitive, that's like, what have I done for you lately kind of thing, you're outgrowing those energies and you're just stepping into a much more purpose-driven community. You are, and it might be happening in baby steps. It doesn't matter, but it's definitely happening. So this arc for you for March of this month, early month, you're going to be feeling a little tired because you'll have a lot going on in that Pisces 12th house. So fatigue, very reflective energy, emotional surfacing things. You could be feeling a little extra sensitive. and you becoming a lot more aware that you're feeling really tired, perhaps even burnt out. By the time mid-month hits and Jupiter goes direct, there's a lot more emotional steadiness. And that Virgo eclipse is really going to be a work reset. For a lot of you, it could be a health reset as well, right? Keeping in mind everything that that sixth house needs, even responsibilities. So maybe you're shifting responsibilities with a significant other, and there's like a redesignating of who does what. Now, very late in the month, that solar eclipse, new spiritual cycle, that sun moves into Aries energy. Happy solar return to those of you who are watching for your Aries sun. And this is going to equate to a personal resubmergence, right? Especially with that sun also going into that first house for you. But you're not showing up on the other side the same person. You're just not. Because Aries, honestly, for years, you guys have operated in survival mode. This is just the reality of Aries rising. So the subconscious is being cleaned, your body is demanding boundaries, your ego is being refined, your home foundations are absolutely stabilizing, and your identity, like I said before, is restructuring. So you're shedding your ego armor, right, that you have been using to protect yourself. And when that armor drops, it's going to feel vulnerable. It will. You might even be feeling that before, right, these energy hits, but underneath the armor is absolute clarity. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time, Aries. Take care. Hi, Taurus. So if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. Wow, you have a lot of stuff going on in your 12th house. Your 11th house, Pisces, is very lit up. For you, this is social identity transformation. I feel like we've been talking about this a lot. This month is a lot about who you belong to and who you no longer belong with, whether that's friends, whether that's a job, a relationship, whatever situation. It's less about surface events and a lot more about like recalibrating your identity through friends, through community, through creativity. For many of you, it's even just through subconscious clearing because of all that Aries energy that's going on in the 12th house, really activating some new beginnings. But first, let's talk about your 11th house activation, the Pisces activation. We got the sun by midnight. We get the sun, Mars, North Node, solar eclipse, still in that Pisces energy until it moves in towards the end of the month into the Aries energy. But that 11th house, is about friendships and professional networks and your social circles, your long-term goals and gains, your hopes for the future. Um, any sort of like collective belonging, right? Because the 11th house is very connected to like the masses. As far as people, it is connected to um, older siblings, stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law as well. This is having to do with people. So if you want to, connect these messages to any of those, but with that heavy Pisces energy in there, your sense of belonging, whether it's in a certain community or in some sort of situation having to do with any of these 11th house people, it's dissolving and it's reforming, right? So psychologically, right, what can this feel like, right? Because remember, we look at everything as through evolutionary astrology lens. You're realizing that you've outgrown certain people. You've outgrown what it is that you see yourself doing over the next 10 to 15 years. You've outgrown many of your networks that you're involved in, you know? A lot of you may even feel spiritually misaligned with those people, with those old, whether it's friends, networks, or even just those ideologies, because there's disillusionment about a long-term goal that you've been working, right, in your life. So you're gonna feel a lot more sensitive around all 11th house energies. So more sensitive around friends, around an older sibling, around stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, whatever. You're wanting more meaning, less performative kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like the performative kind of stuff is wanting you based on what it is that you do for other people, or vice versa. But with Mars in the 11th, this can bring subtle tension with friends, not dramatic fights. It's more like this kind of quiet awareness that you just vibe in, that you don't feel like you fit anymore. You don't feel like you're belonging. Something's off. That's the best way to put it, right? With any of those 11th house energies. Now, that Pisces solar eclipse in the 11th plants a seed for some sort of new tribe for you in that area, but you may not see it immediately. Eclipses close one door before opening another, but we always have to give it about 6 months to roll out. So you're shifting, right, from convenience-based connections to a soul-aligned community. And you know what I mean by that. It's like, well, I'm staying friends with this person because whatever, they like to go to the movies, I like to go to the movies, so I'm maintaining the connection. It's all very surface. You're just going to have less patience for that kind of energy. Now, moving to the Virgo lunar eclipse in the fifth, the fifth house is romance, creativity, children, joy, vacations, entrepreneurial efforts, monetizable talents. It's things you do for fun. Um, that South Node lunar eclipse is exposing where joy has become very controlled in your life, very micromanaged, very small. We should say small, because the controlling, you could have started controlling it differently, or you might have just been feeling very controlled because of money, or because of work, or because of relationship circumstances, or because of children, or because of whatever it is, right? Very controlled, right? So you likely realizing that you've overmanaged some sort of romantic situation, like some sort of relationship, letting go of a creative project that feels just too forced. It's like you're making yourself do something, like let it go, right? You're going to be letting go of perfectionism around children. That's a huge blessing. Ending a romance that lacks spontaneity, that lacks fun, that lacks joy, that's making you feel too small. If you're involved in a relationship with this person, it's like you're constantly bumping heads that's making you feel like, more claustrophobic in the relationship than anything else. You're likely not going to feel very motivated to continue that, because psychologically this can make you analyze joy instead of feeling it, because you're going to be realizing, huh, I'm not feeling the freedom I should be feeling. you know you're realizing that based on the current situation, you're not allowed to feel the joy or the happiness or the freedom, whatever it is, that peacefulness that you would really like to feel, right? And you're going to be realizing that love and children, right, they can't be managed into existence, into an existence that you are comfortable with. Even if you've known that, you're really going to accept it now at this point, right? Because here something reaches a culmination or a release because it's an eclipse, so that some sort of authentic energy can move in, right? Authentic is never controlled. Authentic just kind of is. It happens. It's more natural. It's more flowy, right, with the energy. So not you realizing where you've been pushing agendas, or where maybe somebody's been pushing an agenda for you, or where you've been keeping yourself too small, and you're not going to be able to deal with that anymore. Now, that Pisces solar eclipse in the 11th house, this is some sort of new future vision hitting the scene for you. After that release in the fifth house, right, which is across the wheel, fifth house and 11th house, they work on the same axis, some sort of new 11th house chapter begins. So again, this is going to bring spiritually aligned friendships, some sort of new professional collaboration for a lot of you. There could be some sort of shift in a long-term life direction, for sure, a deeper connection to humanitarian or even artistic groups, or this could even bring a deepening to a relationship with the daughter-in-law, son-in-law, grandchildren, stepchildren, or the opposite, right? Because it is an eclipse. There could be some sort of realization that shifts the dynamic within the relationship, right? But you're really going to be asking the question of what your future actually feels like is yours. And which part of your future do you feel more like it's what somebody else is dictating, or things around you, society, like not you? You're going to be realizing, like, what am I dictating versus what are other people, entities dictating for me, right? Because your energy, Taurus rising in general, often builds slowly and commits long term, for sure. And this eclipse is going to show that some long term dreams of yours that you're living right now were inherited and not chosen necessarily. So, you are allowed to evolve that vision for your future. You are allowed to make those changes, especially with Uranus getting ready to leave your sign after so many years. Finally, next month is going to be leaving there. So a lot of cleanup on aisle 9. This very last month of Uranus ever being in your sign in this lifetime. Okay. Now, speaking of Uranus, he's going to be moving from like 27 by the end of the month. It'll be 28 degrees. Again, still in that first house. This is the final phase of this identity revolution. Since 2018, he's been reshaping your path. That first house having to do with your appearance, your personality, your autonomy, your independence, and how it is that you define yourself, right? That self-definition. Lots of changes are going to be going on here. So we do consider the end degrees of the late decan, the climax phase of an energy. So we're in that again, that climax phase of the revolution, and you are just so not who you are in 2018. Drastic lifestyle shifts over these past years. Lots of changes in your values and even in your aesthetics, break it, who it is, how you present yourself to the world, even what it is that you look like. Lots of you have broken out of rigid identity roles that you were once involved in. You've become a lot less predictable, which is a big deal for a Taurus energy. But that Uranus in the first was, psychologically very disruptive. You know, Likely a lot of you were just saying, like, I just don't fully recognize myself, but I can't go back. Like I don't know who I am right now, but I know I can't go back to where I was. And that's empowerment through, though, individuation, by recognizing that you are a different individual in your own skin right now. And that discomfort that you feel socially, right, because of that 11th house eclipse, is completely connected to your identity evolution, right? You've changed. Some of you circles haven't changed, right? But you have definitely changed. Now, also dealing with that Saturn conjuncting Neptune, which, I spoke a decent amount about last month. This is happening, of course, in your 12th house, and that Aries energy having to do with the subconscious, again, having to do with karma, isolation, hidden fears, very 12th house. It's the house of spiritual retreat. It's behind the curtain. We can kind of hide there. But it's also the house of self-sabotage. Because remember, the 12th house, even though you have Aries in there, that's the home of Pisces. That's where the Pisces fish live, which are twin fish, but they're going in opposite directions, right? So one is unconditionally loving and giving, and the other one is self-sabotage, right? And so it's that very dual type of energy, right? Pisces is nothing, Gemini is nothing on Pisces, Pisces is nothing on Gemini, right? It's twins, but they're going in opposite directions. So Saturn here brings responsibility for your unconscious patterns, right? And Neptune here, right? He's in his domicile here. This is where he rules. Dissolves illusions about them, okay, about those unconscious patterns. So together, this can feel like you are really staring down and dealing with long-term fears. You're becoming aware of how you perhaps have been avoiding dealing with some habits that you've gathered over the years. Um, Ending any sort of patterns of escapism, self-medicating, definitely maturing spiritually in this energy. Now, you may need more time alone. You may feel temporarily withdrawn. This is not regression, it's restructuring, Taurus, okay? So, psychologically, you're clearing out subconscious material that shaped that old social identity, old narratives like, they have to like me, I need to be liked, or I have to be stable at all costs. I have to have all my ducks in a row. I have to be stable, right? I can't disrupt the peace. I can't do that. But all of those ideologies are dissolving right now for you. And Saturn ensures that what's going to replace them is very solid and stable, and it's not at all chaotic, right? So it's a good energy, okay? Now, finally, Jupiter is going retrograde, right? March 10th, we have to give him a couple of weeks to stretch and come out of that post retrograde energy, but it's happening in your third house. So third house is siblings, mental processes, communication, writing, contracts, learning, extended family, your neighbors, your neighborhood, any sort of mental framework as well. Um, Education, right? So it's education from like pre-K all the way through high school and or learning anything from like the bottom up, some sort of grassroots up. So maybe you're taking a webinar, a seminar, or anything like that. If you're not, this is a very nice energy to do it in, I do want to say. So when he stations direct mid-month, and he's going to be in there until June, till the end of June, he's going to end up transiting into your fourth house Leo. But until then, conversations move forward, agreements become a lot more clear, easier to speak about, um, easier to broach. You know what I mean? If you have to come, sit down and have a conversation. Because the third house, ninth house axis is not only communication, but it's also negotiating ideas, right? So your voice is going to feel a lot more confident. Ideas are going to gain momentum. And you may even be getting a very positive message in. And then that message could come in all the way through to June, okay? But this supports your identity shift by giving you the actual language for it. Because you're going to feel like you're changing and it's been really difficult for you to actually articulate it, and now once Jupiter goes direct, you're going to feel it becomes a lot easier for you to articulate it. Now, Pluto and Aquarius still hanging in that 10th house, again, having to do with these long-term plans, these long-term career shifts. It could be connected to the manifestation of mother energy, that Pluto in there. It's subtle this month. It is. So, I don't want you to be concerned. I don't want you to be concerned about anything because none of the transits are good or bad. They just kind of are. We just have to know, right? To be forewarned is to be forewarned is to be forearmed, as I always say. But really being very heavy on the mind, your future, authority shifting here, your public image, you feel like it's shifting, right? Because as your social identity transforms, so does your professional trajectory, so does your very long-term plans, right? You know what I mean? It's almost like a little bit of a game of dominoes here. But, from an evolutionary perspective, the psychological arc for you guys for March of 2026, there is a little bit of disillusionment when it comes to your friendships and your networks. In the beginning, it's going to get better. There could be some sort of like creative or romantic release. They could be a release when it comes to something pertaining to children. They could be increased introspection. But by mid-month with that Virgo eclipse, you're going to be this idea of your happiness and joy being controlled, that's going to be breaking. Once Jupiter goes direct, clearer communication. And we're closing out the end of the month with that Pisces eclipse, new future vision, social identity realignment. So very nice there. I mean, it is. You are, yeah, I mean, you thrive on stability and loyalty, guys. So that's why any sort of shaking of the ground underneath your feet, it might feel a little uncomfortable first, but stability can become stagnation. That stability that you crave can very easily become stagnation. So this month is asking who you are when you're not anchored to certain roles, whether it's a role in whatever relationship or job or whatever it is. Who are you outside of that? Now, at first, loneliness can rise to the surface. So if you are feeling that, please understand that that's very on brand for these transits, and it's just pushing you to think about these things because that loneliness that you're feeling is really more of a bridge between outdated belonging and authentic belonging, something that's a lot more real and a lot more supportive for you because you're moving from this identity that's been very comfort based, right, to truth based, right? There's a real shift there. And that shift is really, really profound for you guys. So just sort of, stay very open to processing and just thinking about things as they come up, because that's really how we should be using our astrology, guys, more than anything. Anything that we discuss for any of the archetypes, it's really meant to encourage thought. So I always say, like a seed for thought. It's more about that. It should be more about that than anything else, right? All right, my friends. So I hope this was helpful for you guys, Taurus. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hi, Gemini. I hope you guys are doing great. So, for March, very much about this is a destiny reorientation. So, for a lot of you, it's your career. For others of you, not everybody's working, your long-term goals. There's definitely a reorientation going on here. This is not just a career month. This is not just a let me rethink my future month. There's a lot going on here, especially because of how your angular houses are being lit up this month for sure. But it's about redefining success, but on your own terms and not based on anybody else, not based on the past. Because remember, you have a lot of energy going on in that Pisces 10th house, which governs your career, your public reputation, right? How people know you, your authority, right? The agency that you have over your own life, visibility, right? It's the most visible house in the chart. Your life direction, your relationship and connection to power. It's also the manifestation of mother energy, too. I do like to always throw that in. So whenever we have a large activation of the 10th house, we always just want to mention, that you can connect this to, well, I like to mention this, where you would connect it to mother energy where you see fit. But this energy in that 10th house becomes very fluid, very intuitive, very emotionally based, right? And psychologically, which we always like to look at it through the lens, because I do evolutionary astrology, so we always want to look through that lens of psychology. There could be this element of dissatisfaction with any sort of goals or ambitions that are entirely practical. Just such a Geminian thing. It's like if it's totally practical, it might be boring, right? But it can be um, structured. It can be, in its own way. It can bring stability, but it might not be totally practical, right? You may be questioning whether your work has meaning. You may be feeling unseen or misunderstood publicly, or you might just feel like you don't belong anywhere. You might be feeling like you're hanging out with the nicest people, whether it's in work or your friend groups or whatever, but just feeling like you just maybe don't belong. Now, if you're a night baby, if you were born after sunset and before sunrise, you might always feel like that anyway. Maybe it's just exaggerated during this period. But regardless of when you were born, this energy can certainly make you feel like that. A little unseen, right? A little misunderstood. Really wanting a calling and not just a job. It is not even about wanting so much to make your mark in the world. It's just like really needing to feel very connected to what it is that you're doing as you step into the future. And again, it could have to do with your career, but the 10th house is not only that. A lot of you may be applying the same psychology to your marriage. Because the 10th house also does rule the overall state and conditioning of our most important relationships. So, not wanting just a marriage, you want to feel that soul connection, not just wanting whatever it is. You want to feel like very connected to it. And with Mars in the 10th brings activity and pressure. So, you can easily feel an urgency to act for many of you professionally. This could bring an increased workload. This could bring a public confrontation or some tension in that arena. Emotional reactions tied to authority. There could be some sort of like face-to-face confrontation with mother energy. Some sort of confrontational energy having to do with that spouse, or again, that energy that will be connected to your long-term plans. But because it's in Pisces, the action feels foggy rather than very direct, right? So you're sensing that something must change, even if you can't logically map it yet, you know? You can't, like, you're just not sure what it all, you might be able to connect to the fact that you feel a certain way, but like, I don't know what this actually means over the long term. That's okay. You could shelf that just for a minute. It's enough to recognize the emotion right now. Now, we're also dealing with the Virgo lunar eclipse. This is going to be really light. The eclipses are going to be lighting up the whole month. So it really is, right? For you, the fourth house, home, roots, emotional foundation. So this could be connected to family, to ancestry, to childhood patterns, any kind of living situation, home, property, real estate. Um, but it's, fourth house is it's the deepest house of your chart. It's very connected to your emotional safety, emotional stability, your private self, all of those things that are very deeply, deeply personal. Now, that South Node lunar eclipse here, release can possibly be bringing moving for a lot of you, or restructuring living arrangements, or ending a family dynamic pattern, right? How you connect to family, how you speak to family, who you speak to versus who you don't speak to, right? They could be healing, they could be breaking away, right? You could be realizing that you've been building your career to compensate for emotional security. I mean, and that's a classic dynamic between fourth house, 10th house energy, which is what we're talking about here. A lot of you, this eclipse could be bringing a release in inherited definitions of success and, those societal expectations. Realizing, like, I really don't give so much of a shit like that. I was supposed to do A, B, and C, or, you know, but also realizing that you've likely taken those things from your early environment, where again, this idea of inheriting something not by choice, and then realizing that it doesn't really hold much value in your life anymore. So, but the thing is, it is Virgo in that 12th house, right? So psychologically, this can create over responsibility in the family, hyper control over a home, property, real estate, any sort of like, you know, home order, you know what I mean? Like domestic, having control over your home environment. You may try to even suppress your emotional needs. You might not even realize that you're doing it, honestly. I just want to say that, especially because since 2018, Uranus has been in the 12th. So you might have been dealing with a lot of realizations about yourself, but the interesting part is that until Uranus gets out of that first house, out of that 12th house and into your first, you're not even going to realize how much stuff there is still to clean up. But you needed all of this release and all of this. A lot of you have likely been working on your shadow side, healing past hurts, letting go, forgiving, all that 12th house stuff. And then a lot of you still may be in this space where it's like, come on, how come I don't feel all better yet? You know what I mean? Well, that Uranus energy, and then Chiron is going to be going to the 12th house. I promise you, it's going to look a lot different next year, and in a good way, when it comes to um, experiencing the benefits of all of the healing and all of the work, the psychological work that you've been doing. But this eclipse is definitely asking you some very profound questions this month, really asking you that, like, Jem, like what part of your ambition is rooted in proving something? And who are you trying to prove that thing to? Is it just to yourself? Is it to society? Is it both? Is it to family? Is it to that, you know, like, where is your Chiron? What house is it in? Who maybe you're trying to prove something to your family, again, to yourself, to an old hurt version of yourself from relationship. Just being able to label it is so terribly helpful here, right? Really, really helpful. Um, and honestly, when that fourth house shifts, the 10th house has to follow. So your public role is built on that private foundation. And this is becoming really, really obvious to you, right? So again, if that foundation changes, that structure above it has to adjust, right? Like fourth house, 10th house. So that has to adjust. So, for example, like if you're moving, right? Obviously, how you make your money or that career situation is going to change. Or if you are changing how it is that you attain emotional stability, you're making a shift there. That's going to impact how it is that you show up in the world, right? So there are these shifts here, right? So your public role is built on that private foundation, and these things, these two things are working together. Now, that Pisces solar eclipse in that 10th house, this is a new professional chapter for you. Obviously, after that emotional clearing in the 4th house, the solar eclipse in your 10th is going to be planting some kind of new seed. So this can show up for many of you as a professional opportunity, a shift in your reputation, right? Like how people know you. Maybe you're starting a new business, or maybe you're getting divorced, or you're getting married, or you're starting something new for yourself, right? There's some sort of shift in your reputation that is going to be happening. And because it's sort of happening with this, what seems to me to be some sort of real pivot. Now it's opposing the fourth, so maybe the pivot is just having to do with where it is that you're living. For a lot of you, it's your living situation and a career pivot. And it's this pivot is calling you to feel a lot more spiritually aligned with where you're at in your life. This eclipse is not logical. You just have to understand that. I know. I was, oh, no, no, no. It is logical because of Virgo. Nope, it is not, because Pisces is also involved in it. It's not. It's like you're gonna be like, I can't explain why this is right, but it is. People might be like, but Gemini rising, why did you start that business? I don't know. I just feel like it's right. Why did you move to that place? I just know it's right. That's what I can tell you, right? And that just needs to be enough right now, right? And you guys keep, your chart is ruled by Mercury, you're ruled by Mercury, which really does prefer clarity, is very data driven, right? Pisces energy is all about intuition, though, right? And so this month challenges you to really deeply trust that inner knowing over strategy. But man, is it going to annoy you, because you're going to want to know. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're setting changes in motion because you know it's the right thing to do. You can't exactly say 100% why, and you may not even know where it's going to lead, but you know that it's something that you have to do. If that's what you're doing, you're right on point. You're listening to spirit, you're listening to God's messages. That right there is what astrology is all about. It's not about having all the answers all the time. It's about just understanding, like, the direction of the wind that you're supposed to really be following. Now, we're still dealing with, obviously, not only from last week, we're going to be dealing with this for the next couple of years, but this Saturn energy conjuncting Neptune in Aries in that 11th house, again, having to do with future vision, social structure, very connected again to long-term goals in the 11th house, your networks, professional alliances, social visibility, collective contribution, having to do with people. It's daughter-in-law, son-in-law, stepchildren, grandchildren, older siblings as well. But Saturn here brings seriousness, and he always brings pruning. He is pruning that energy. And Neptune at the same time dissolves, right? Who you thought was aligned with you, what it is that you thought was the right thing for your future. So together, some friendships thin out here, professional networks become restructured, and you become really selective. You take your future a lot more seriously now. So psychologically, and we're always going to look at it through that lens because we're doing evolutionary astrology here, you're moving from like popularity-based success to purpose-based success. You have to really believe in what it is that you're doing. And you may feel temporarily isolated socially, but the alliances that do stick around remain, they're a lot stronger. It's that quintessential that I always say, shaking the deadwood off the tree. Whatever the deadwood is, it's going to shake off. Whatever's still on there was meant to go the longer term with you. And this transit is asking, this eclipse is asking you if your future is aligned with your soul. Or is just your resume aligned with your soul? Where's the soul alignment coming from? Is it from your resume? Is it coming from is it coming from you? Where is it coming from? There's got to be a little bit of clarity made there. You're not going to be clear on everything, but that's one thing that you could become a lot more clear on. Now, thank goodness Jupiter is finally going direct. Not that Jupiter retrograde is a big deal. This makes us a lot more pensive, in that particular arena. It's in Cancer for you. It's in that second house of finances and self-worth. Now, that second house having to do with, again, income, financial stability, personal resources, value system. It's also very connected to the overall health of your internal organs. Okay, so while he's been retrograde, he probably brought um, like a sitting down and looking at your finances, making some sort of budget adjustments there, reflecting on how it is that you earn and also your emotional ties to money. It's in the second house having to do with wanting to feel very secure, right? And so that would be an emotional tie to money. When Jupiter goes direct, and he's going to stay direct until June, at which point he's going to move into your third house Leo energy. But once he goes direct mid-month, your income flow improves. So things might have been a little stagnant up to this point. Confidence in being able to earn actually returns. Some sort of financial opportunities can, I want to say, reopen, right? They can reopen. But because of all of these things, your self-worth is certainly going to be strengthening as the month progresses. So psychologically and obviously, this is going to help you detach your identity from your income. And you're just going to start to realize that your value is not limited to how much money you make, right? But this stabilization is going to give you a lot of courage to adjust your 10th house direction, which would be your career and what it is that you're doing out there in the world. Now, we do have that Uranus still hanging at the very last degrees of that Taurus energy in the 12th house. He's going from 27 to 28 degrees. He's getting very close. Next month, he's going to be going into that first house Gemini energy. He's going to be lighting up, that first house. But this is definitely a subconscious disruptor having to do with this last month in your lifetime that he's ever going to be in your 12th house. So it could be destabilizing, bringing to the surface hidden fears, limiting beliefs, old psychological patterns. So, AKA a tad of anxiety. So if you're feeling a little anxious, and even if no one recognizes it in you, but you're feeling like low key, maybe not so low key, kind of nervous about your next steps and where it is that you're going, um, you're on brand for that. You may be realizing some things. A lot of you may be realizing where, you know, um, you've been self-sabotaging yourself. And the thing is, the self-sabotage can wear so many hats. It can have to do with literal, like maybe you're dealing with some sort of addiction, drinking too much, eating too much, doing something too much. Um, but it could also just be like where you've been discounting yourself, where you've been putting yourself down, where you've been getting in your own way, where you've been saying, like, I know I can do that, but what if it's not successful? What if it's not whatever? And really being able to identify that, right? Um, Great energy for breakthroughs in therapy. For those of you who are therapy, or even if you're just doing your own therapy, if you're doing your own journaling, anything like that. A lot of you have likely experienced disruptive sleep, crazy dream patterns. This could, unexpected endings behind the scenes could also be happening in your experience. Those unexpected endings could be connected to any part of life. So an unexpected ending having to do with a job, a relationship. But because it's 12th house, it could just be like you just quitting something like that. You just deciding, I'm not going to drink anymore. Boom. I'm going to stop overeating. Boom. I'm going to stop doing A, B, and C. Boom. It's a very supportive energy in that way. It's different ways that it can manifest. It does depend on your own chart, but it really does, really kind of wake you up. It is a wake up kind of energy. And this kind of energy absolutely feeds a career pivot as well, a pivot having to do with your long-term energy. So you're not just like changing jobs, you're not just changing your direction, you're dismantling unconscious, ambitious scripts that have been sort of rolling in your head that you thought that you needed to do, and you're changing those things up. They're being restructured. Now, Pluto obviously is still in Aquarius. Let me see if is he creating any little challenges for you this month? He's really just adding depth It's adding depth to the eclipse. You know, you're redefining success because your worldview is evolving. You're definitely evolving your worldview. Um, yeah, what once impressed you, what once used to, knock your socks off, you'd be like, ooh, ooh, you really like whatever now. You're not easily impressed, right? You could feel very empty when it comes to what used to impress you, and you're becoming just a lot more powerful intellectually as well as spiritually, right? So again, from a psychological perspective, it's kind of breaking the month down early. This early part of the month, it can be some career confusion or emotional pressure, family dynamic realization. You could be feeling quite sensitive around family dynamic situations, anything having to do with whether it's siblings or whether it's a spouse or whether it's connected to home property, real estate, or just where it is that you live, feeling this push-pull between your public life and your private life. There's an unsettling. You know what I mean? Like you just feel it, like your shoes are on too tight or there's a pebble in your shoe, any of those. You know what I mean? Like at the beginning of the month. By mid-month, that Virgo eclipse is going to release some sort of family or housing situation that's been going on. So maybe you're making the decision to move, or you have that conversation with that family member, or whatever it is, or you are finally arriving at some sort of solution that's going to help support your emotional security over the long term. Jupiter direct stabilizes finances as well, and in your energy here in the second house. So that'll be very welcomed, I suppose, for many of you. But we have this psychological journey that we're continuing, guys, right? And you often succeed through being adaptable, but adaptability can become very fragmented. And I hear a lot of you saying amen to that, right? Being able to, recognizing the fragmentation, right, that can be experienced in life. And so this month is asking, who are you publicly when you're no longer performing? When you're no longer being that thing for that situation or that person for that other person, whatever it is, right? You're redefining success really, Gem, in three major ways: separating career from family expectations, you're separating your income from your identity, and you're separating popularity from purpose. You're just separating these things. You're not losing direction. You're redefining your destiny here. It's a very important month. It really is. And you say, oh, Jackie, you always say that. I say that because it's true. Every month is a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone, right? But that is what I have for you, my friends. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Cancer. I hope you guys are doing great. March is all about faith versus fear for you guys. Your ninth and 10th house are very, very lit up. So for this month, it's all about reclaiming authority by transforming your belief system, right? Because that ninth house, your belief system, it's faith. And there's a tension between anxiety-driven thinking, which is very third house, and higher wisdom, which is very ninth house. At the same time, your public life, which is in your 10th house, it's undergoing some sort of long-term restructuring. So you're really being asked to ask and answer the question, are you living from fear right now in your life, or from faith? Right? And so let's unpack that. Let's talk about this ninth house activation, where we have the sun and Mars, at least initially the sun, the north node, solar eclipse. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. So again, that ninth house governs belief systems, higher education, publishing, traveling, law, local legalities, local governance, um, publishing, marketing, advertising, religion, spirituality. It's a big house because Jupiter rules it. Life philosophy, meaning, or meaning in life, right? And so with, a lot of these Pisces placements that are going on here, your worldview is dissolving and it's reforming. It just is. You're starting to understand things differently. And your psychological experience, which is what I always look at as an evolutionary astrologer, is you're questioning. You're questioning things. You're questioning long-held beliefs. You're feeling spiritually restless. You're doubting previous certainties. You're longing for some really deep meaning. Considering study, maybe you're considering going to university, or maybe studying some sort of higher-minded subject. It could be teaching, could be some sort of spiritual immersion. Excuse me, some of you may be feeling a lot more pulled toward religion. Many of you may be. Ninth house is also politics. I don't know. I know I said law, but it's also politics. It's lawyers as well. Not only the law and local governance, but also the lawyers involved. So some of you may be, leaning in that direction. But with Mars in the ninth, it brings urgency, for you around truth. And Mars is going to be for most of the month. After the first few days, like the 4th into the 5th, Mars is going to be moving into that ninth house Pisces space. So you may be feeling defensive about your beliefs. You may be motivated to defend a philosophy that you hold, defend um, a political belief, a religious belief, any kind of belief, right? You may feel drawn to take action around some sort of legal matter or some sort of academic matter. Some of you may be, really any sort of a legal matter, though, it really can be very highlighted. You may be deciding that, right? But Pisces blurs certainty. So it can feel a little confusing initially, it can feel a little destabilizing because you're moving from rigid certainty to intuitive wisdom. And that's a big jump from that rigidity to that intuitive energy. Because when we're working with our intuition, it's it's a little more vague, but yet we know it's right? So if you're feeling that, you're very on brand for this month. Now, we have a lot of other things going on. We have this Virgo lunar eclipse. This is happening in your third house. Third house is mind, communication, daily thinking, your thought patterns. Um, when I say communication, it's your communication style, it's siblings, extended family, your neighbors, your neighborhood, contracts, local environment, your mental habits as well. Your habit, and Virgo in the third can be very connected to overthinking, hyperanalysis, worry spirals, lots of mental self-criticism, where you get on that hamster wheel, it's really difficult to get off. Now, that South Node lunar eclipse here exposes anxious thinking loops, right? It's so the way that this can manifest for a lot of you could be, really being pushed to end a draining conversation pattern, talking about the same thing over and over again, just not wanting to keep revisiting that thing anymore, realizing that you've been catastrophizing things, thinking of the worst possible thing, letting go of constant what if thinking, you know? But if I do this, what if that happens? Then that's going to happen. And it's like worrying twice about something, right? Right? Letting go of that, really letting go and releasing a communication dynamic with either a sibling or even a colleague or extended family member. It's releasing the communication, at least temporarily. Right. Now, this can work two ways, though. The release can be that you're no longer speaking with person A, B, or C, whatever it is, and now you are. So it could be a reconnection. But it could also be realizing that you might need to love or appreciate somebody from across the street, right? A little bit of distance. It doesn't mean forever, but there's got to be this, there is definitely going to be some sort of release in that space. Now, because it's in Virgo and Virgo does rule your work environment, there could be this, you might be changing jobs, I mean, you may be doing that. Many of you are at least feeling very pressured to do that, especially with that opposition 11th house. I mean, that Uranus energy getting ready to go into your 12th house, which opposes that 6th house energy. A lot of you can be pushed to get a job, right? But you're going to be able to see how fear-based thinking has limited, not only your expansion, but your willingness to take certain risks. And we could apply that to across the board, a willingness to go for that job, go for that relationship, go for that thing, whatever it is. It's a very, very much a mental detox for you. And, if the third house is fear, then the ninth house is faith, right? And that's what's happening here. So this eclipse axis is really going to ask you to choose, and you have to make that choice, Cancer, right? Are you going to be choosing that faith energy, or are you going to be choosing the fear? you know um And only you know the answer to that. And, depending on which side you choose, it will likely be connected to whatever's going on in your own natal chart. But um, yeah, you're going to have to decide. Now, that Pisces solar eclipse happening in that ninth house, there's a new birth here of your worldview. After releasing anxious mental habits, this eclipse is going to plant a seed of higher meaning in that space. So this could absolutely begin as the beginning of some sort of new spiritual practice. Others of you may be deciding to pursue higher education or something that is highly intellectualized. Maybe you're deciding to write or publish, either one of those. Again, very active in that ninth house. Many of you may be planning international travel. There could be some sort of legal resolution that opens up a new chapter for you in your life. But even a little more deeply, you're developing trust in your inner guidance, which I love this for you, right? Because for you guys, this is powerful because the moon rules your chart, right? And so emotional safety often drives your decisions, right? Even if you can logically break something down, and most of you can, Cancer is a very smart energy, it's not that you can't logically break something down, but it's just that your emotions matter more to you, right? This eclipse is saying to you that you're safe in expanding, you're very safe in believing in something. You can trust your intuition. You don't have to overthink it, right? You don't have to overthink it, and don't let those fears rule you. Now, Jupiter stationing direct is going to be very helpful in your energy, and it's going to be in there until June. Then he's going to get ready to move into your Leo second house energy. But that's all about identity and confidence, that first house, right? So Jupiter in your first is very expansive, very protective, very connected to confidence building. But the retrograde might have brought some self-doubt, some reflection on your personal direction and your your reassessment of your physical body, of your emotional self, just a reassessment of any of these, questioning your growth because Jupiter is very connected to growth. So when he's retrograde, that's what he does, right? But March 10th, he's going to be going direct, and then we're going to start to feel it. So as the month rolls out, we start to feel it more and more. He's got to come out of that post-shadow period, but confidence is going to, increase, and visibility will increase, and optimism will come back, and your physical vitality is going to improve. You might have been dealing with feeling a little bit more run down with Jupiter retrograde in that first house. Maybe you felt a little run down. Maybe you were dealing with a cold, or you were dealing with some sort of first house thing, which would have to do with like ear, nose, and throat situation you might have had going on, or just feeling physically tired, or maybe some sort of like shoulder, hip, back kind of situation thing going on. Any of those things can certainly happen when Jupiter goes retrograde, but now direct. Things are going to start lightening up for you. But what I like about this is your outer identity begins to align with this new worldview, this new belief system that you're going to be adapting to, or adopting and then adapting to. So you feel bigger, but grounded in a way, right? This idea of growth is something that's totally happening. So this is going to really help you step into that 10th house restructuring, which is happening here, without the fear. And speaking of the 10th house Aries energy, we do have Saturn conjunct Neptune still, right? I did a lot of messaging on them last month, but they're still there. So let's just interpret what might be going on having to do with them, having, connected to the month of March. But again, career and authority reconstruction in that 10th house. 10th house governs your career, public reputation, your standing in the world, authority, legacy, responsibility, connection to power. Again, Saturn brings structure and accountability. He likes to prune things. He likes to prune things. And Neptune dissolves illusions about status and ambition when he hangs out in that 10th house. So when we bring them together in that 10th, some sort of old career identity just starts to fade away. Right? And for some of you, it can literally be because you got a new job. For a lot of you, it's just this restructuring of what you thought you wanted. Public roles for many of you feel very spiritually misaligned. You're starting to feel it, right? authority dynamics will shift. You feel called to do something more authentic, right? So you're feeling these things. So, how did these feelings end up translating into your experience? Well, career pivot for a lot of you. Leadership responsibility for a lot of you. Restructuring of your old professional image can happen here as well. Realizing that a role that you've been in that you once desired very much no longer fits. Now, I just want to be honest, the 10th house is also your long-term goals. It's this overall status of your marriage. It's the status of the direction that you're going in, right? It's the 10th house, the highest house in your chart. So you're looking at like that marriage that you once were so happy in and you really wanted it, you might be feeling a different way right now. So just to consider and look at that and see how you might be able to fix it if it's, if it's fixable. Really looking at that career, looking at your long-term goals, because you're redefining what all of this means to you, right? You're really redefining what authority means. Right? And I don't only mean authority like having to do with your superiors, but what does it mean to have authority over your life? What does it mean to have sovereignty and agency over your life, right? And, and that's really important, you know, these things ruminating through your head, right? Where you need to achieve to feel secure, I need more money or I need more stability in order to feel like I'm okay. You're going to be moving more towards this idea of leading your life through emotional wisdom. And I understand emotional wisdom isn't paying the bills, but you're going to be able to balance something out there. This transit is going to feel very fated because Saturn sets long-term foundations and it's in the house that he lives in. Hello. So it's like he's going to be hanging out at home for him for the next 3 years. So he's really going to want to, you know, redo the garden and redecorate and repaint, right? This is what he's going to want to be doing. So you just have to understand this because you're building the next decade, really, of your public life right now. Now, we're also dealing with Uranus and Taurus at those very last degrees. So he's going to be going from 27 degrees and then to 28 degrees by the end of the month in that 11th house. He's really getting ready to go into the 12th house for you by next month. But this is the social network evolution, right? Because what is Uranus is very much about evolution. He is in domicile in that 11th house, of course. So sudden social shifts, new innovative alliances, breaking from outdated group roles. This is entirely connected to technology as well. So those of you who actually, it's in Taurus, how you make your money, 11th house is very connected to technology. So it can be some sort of new opportunity for those of you who work in the area of anything connected to technology, anything connected to the masses, anything connected to, and when I say so, advances in technology, science advances, anything having to do with, medicine, medical advances, anything that is out of the ordinary. It's very future based, very, very future based. So, but what I like about this is it's very, very supportive of that ninth house and 10th house transformation. As your beliefs change, so do the circles that you run in. So, your belief changes, and then you perhaps, I'm just giving this as a basic example, you get a new job and suddenly your network of people is different, right? I mean, that's how that's an example of how it could play out. But we also have, again, this Pluto and Aquarius energy. Let me just see if he's doing anything to you this month. It's in the 8th house, very deep psychological, powerful placement having to do with emotional transformation, financial entanglements with other people. There's a shift there. It does seem like intimacy evolution, some sort of shadow integration, which is really good. But this month is likely going to trigger some sort of deep trust themes for you. Psychologically, this adds intensity to your authority shift that's going on in that 9th house. So you're really learning to hold power without fear. And this is what I really like for you guys, right? There's much less fear-based energy that's happening for you right now. So that's really, really nice there for you. So let's talk about, let's just kind of break this out, right? In the beginning of the month, you're questioning your beliefs. It's a lot of mental anxiety surfacing. You're not feeling very happy in your job. You're not feeling very happy in your life direction. You might not be feeling real happy in your marriage. All of that is very on brand for the beginning of the month. By mid-month, we have that Virgo eclipse clearing out anxious thought patterns. Jupiter direct does restore confidence, and by the end of the month, that solar eclipse is going to be planting a new world view. There will be career restructuring, becomes a lot more clear. So there will be a lot more clarity, you know? And just remember, guys, just as a Cancer rising, you seek emotional safety first. But sometimes that safety becomes very limiting. And this month of March, this is really going to be pushing you to expand beyond your protective walls because you're learning. You're learning that fear is not wisdom, that anxiety is not intuition, that authority does not require hardness and all this crazy structure. You're realizing that you have the power to create a very unique and different kind of authority for yourself. You're stepping into a mature leadership energy rooted in very high emotional intelligence, which is great for you. Again, this idea of faith replaces fear, and confidence is returning for you from within, though, not from any sort of external validation, not, waiting to hear anybody say, good job, da da da, whatever. It's different. It's coming from you, it's coming from God. This is ninth house energy. That's where God speaks to us, and you're just feeling it very, very deeply. So, that is what I have for you, my friends. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Hey Leo, I hope you guys are doing great. So let's unpack March for you. So for you guys, this month is really about like emotional vulnerability and power rebalancing. There's going to be a real looking at these things in a very honest way, right? This is activating one of the most psychologically intense house axes in astrology, which would be axes 2 and 8, right? That second house has to do with self-worth and money. And that eighth house has to do with shared resources, intimacy, and the exchange or the handling of power, right? And it's this opposition is going to be very highlighted with this eclipse. So this is about control, trust, as well as the courage to be emotionally exposed. Because that's always a scary thing, right? But let's talk first about this eighth house activation. We're going to have the sun in there for most of the month, Mars, North Node, solar eclipse. We're going to have until the sun, towards the end of the month moves into Aries. But this house governs, again, intimacy, psychological depth, trauma, shared finances, debt, taxes, other people's money, any kind of power exchange. It rules vulnerability. Did I say sexuality? I forget, but I think, yeah. So sexuality as well. Um, Emotional merging, it's where you literally merge with another person, right? Second house is like your belief system. And then the eighth house is you merging your belief system with somebody else's, belief system. And when Pisces, gets activated like that in the eighth house, the boundaries in these areas all become very blurred. So psychologically, you could feel this heightened emotional sensitivity when it comes to all those eighth house things, whether it's intimacy, shared resources, um, anxiety, control, right? Feeling very sensitive, like, am I in control of things? Am I not in control of things? And obviously, if you're feeling that, then there's a fear of losing control, financial uncertainty connected to other people. Now, the other person could be a significant other, but it could also be the stock market. The eighth house is the stock market. The eighth house, any sort of investment. Um, uh, Having to do, I said debt and taxes. Oh, inheritance, insurance payouts, anything like that, financial, just any sort of financial uncertainty connected to other people. And there's at the same time, a very deep longing for emotional closeness. And at the same time, old traumas resurfacing, because of this activation. Now, Mars in the eighth house can really trigger intense emotional reactions, lots of arguments about money, um, power struggles in partnership, like who does what. There could be the reawakening of sexual tensions within relationships. But Pisces makes this very subtle, right? Because Pisces is the landlord of the 12th house, is the house of the hidden, right? So he makes it subtle. He doesn't make it explosive. It's very internal. It's very emotional. So you may feel, I really want closeness, right? You may be feeling, I really want closeness. I want it, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid at what cost? Like I want closeness, but it's like you don't trust the other side of something because I want the closeness, but then that's going to mean I have to sell myself out or I'm not going to have control or whatever it is. So it's like at what cost, right? So let's break down that second house energy, that Virgo eclipse in the second house, self-worth and personal resources, second house. So financial stability, self-esteem, your possessions, right? Your bed, your couch, it's all second house. Material security, what you value. Second house is also very connected to our health, by the way. And because Virgo is the sign that rules health, mental, physical, and emotional, and the second house where your Virgo is placed, those rule the overall health of your internal organs. There's a release here. Okay, there's a release in this space. So possible manifestations here could be getting in front of some sort of medical situation or realizing some sort of medical situation. There could be a paying off of debt. There could be changing income streams. There could be a realization that you've over controlled your finances. That I don't want to say that you because you're trying to just be prudent, but other people might say that you're cheap or that you are, um, you know, you're too hyper focused on keeping everything in at the expense of things that maybe need fixing or anything like that, and so you're ending this scarcity mindset, and that's very important to note is that it's challenging a scarcity mindset, right? And you'll know if you have a scarcity mindset, particularly if you were raised without a lot in your early environment, if you didn't have a lot, and then you grew, as you grew older, you started making more money. There's always that fear because the foundation of your soul that's created through our Chiron placement before the age of 8 years old, right? It's solidified between us ages 7 and 8. Whatever our experience then, it really does inform, our experience. So a lot of people were raised without a lot, but their parents hid it from them, so they don't understand that experience. So they don't have the scarcity mindset. Other people, it really was, and this is not about blaming anybody or doing anything the right way, the wrong way, whatever. If that was your experience, right? Needing to end that, right? This month really wants you to look at that. And you're likely going to see how your need for financial control has been protecting you from emotional vulnerability, really, at the end of the day, right? So this eclipse is asking you, is security about control or is it about trust? And a lot of you are going to be like, control every day, even Sunday. You know what I mean? But um, this month is asking you to think a little differently. Now, we also have the Pisces eclipse that's happening in the eighth house. So, after releasing the financial or self-worth pattern in the second house, that eclipse, that Pisces eclipse, is going to plant a seed in that eighth house. And this can absolutely manifest as deepening a partnership, entering a financial agreement, some kind of emotional breakthrough, therapy or healing begin, a new way of sharing resources. This is not casual at all. It's not. This eclipse initiates this new power sharing dynamic because you're learning here. You're learning, to share money, to share emotions, to share control. Because for Leo risings in particular, you naturally shine when it comes to independence, right? This is what you do. You love that kind of energy, right? But this is about profound growth through trust as well, right? And we also have this Pluto in Aquarius in your seventh house of relationships, of contracts, of boss or bosses, your energetic output at work. So let's see if Pluto, let me just look at your chart here. What is he doing? Again, that's marriage, one-on-one dynamics. And he is creating this intense relational transformation in this space. Especially, he's very, very powerful the first few years he's in there. Now he's very comfortable. He's at 5 degrees. He's very comfortable in there. He's really looking to shake things up. And this is where control issues are exposed. Magnetic but very complex partnerships can be exposed as well. Power dynamics resurfacing. This is not necessarily negative, it's just more transformative, right? Because Pluto in the seventh is really asking you, are your relationships equal, or is there a hierarchy in your relationships? And if there is a hierarchy, this month is really going to highlight that, right? Because for you guys, you often occupy the spotlight. You guys love the energy of the entertainer and the person at the front of the room. This transit does push towards balance. So you may encounter a very powerful partner, or a partner who challenges you, or a boss who challenges you, or some sort of work assignment that's going to be very challenging for you, or a relationship that forces shadow work, or a deep commitment, or a deep ending, right? Either way, because that eighth house eclipse, that's really amplifying this process, right? Because none of them work alone, right? They're all kind of working together. Now, we also have that Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. I started talking about that last month. I did a separate video on that. It is lighting up that ninth house of philosophy, religion, higher education, law, travel, personal belief systems. Oh my gosh, the ninth house is so much. It's the manifestation of father energy. It's law, it's lawyers, legalities and governance, politics, publishing, marketing, advertising, getting something out there to the world. Saturn brings a lot of structure to this, everything I just said, but he also brings a lot of structure to your worldview. Now, Neptune dissolves illusions about what you thought was true. So with them conjunct in this way, again, and as I mentioned last night, there's this spiritual maturation process that's going on, humbling experiences for you guys, for sure, reassessing your moral frameworks, questioning long-held beliefs. If you are, my goodness, that's great. That is so on brand. Let yourself have those experiences. Don't become too prideful, and don't try to blame out. Like, you really want to take that in and just admit to yourself that your old belief system probably doesn't fully hold anymore, right? And because this ends up creating a lot of humility and depth this month. You're becoming wiser, less dogmatic, so much more compassionate. And having that Jupiter in Cancer, which is finally, by the way, going direct on March 10th, this is all going to be happening in your 12th house, which is another very spiritual house. This is very connected to subconscious healing, forgiveness, spiritual protection, letting go of hidden resentment. This softens that intensity of that eighth house work, right? Really to soften it. You're supported in the background here. This is a nice energy for you. From, again, March 10th, goes direct, give him a week or two to unknot himself from being in retrograde. But he's going to be in there until June, at which point he's going to go into your first house. He's going to go into your sign, into Leo. But we also have Uranus and Taurus. Uranus is going to be at 27 degrees first, at the beginning of the month, and then go into 8 degrees, 28 degrees. He is getting so ready to just do his little shift into Gemini next month. And he's getting out of your 10th house. Last little dip. Last month, never again in your lifetime. Okay? So your public life really does continue to evolve unpredictably. There could be career changes. There could be reputation shifts. There could be authority dynamic shifting. As you release control in your finances and your relationships, your professional identity can easily evolve as well. But now, not everybody's working. 10th house is also the manifestation of mother energy, so there can be some shifts having to do with mother energy. Also, the overall state of the overall they say the state or the condition of your marriage, your long-term plans. So, there could be a shifting. Like this month, there could be this sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's having to do with some shifts. It opposes the fourth house, which is home, property, real estate. It's, family. So you may be rethinking where it is that you're going and what it is that you're doing. And this is the last dribbles of this month again, because as we go into April, April is when the shift happens. Okay. So it is the final cleaning up on aisle 9 when it comes to that revolutionizing kind of energy. And we can never say for certain, and I always say this because I feel like I need to, we can never say exactly what Uranus means. No one should be saying that. If anybody says, this is what Uranus means in this blah blah blah, other than to say change, revolution, it's a revolutionary energy, shaking things up. We can never tell you where. He's the wild child of the zodiac. It's just the way it is. So we could just open up our energy and say, okay, Uranus, do your thing, because whatever you're doing, you're trying to revolutionize my life, you know? And that's important to note there, right? So as we begin this month, there is emotional intensity. There can be some financial tension. There can be power imbalance awareness, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in any of your relationships, work, whatever it is. But the realization is there. Mid-month, that Virgo eclipse is going to be restructuring your self-worth, and that Jupiter direct is going to be offering a lot of emotional protection. And as we close out the month, that solar eclipse is going to deepen intimacy and partnership dynamics, intensify here, and depending on either end of the aisle, they're becoming more intense though, to either rectify something, to improve it and heal it, or to say, it's time that we pull this back a bit, but we have to understand this important month, and it's very connected to this core psychological journey that you're on. Because Leo, you guys thrive on self-expression and autonomy. You appreciate that. But true leadership requires vulnerability. So March is teaching you control is not power. Vulnerability is not weakness, and shared power strengthens relationships. You are learning to share power, right? And that transformation reshapes your finances, your partnerships, your identity. It's reshaping things. This is a shadow integration, and it's so profound and it's so good for you. Okay, Leo, so that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Virgo, I hope you guys are doing great. Let's unpack March for you. So this month for you guys, this is a relationship karma and identity recalibration. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. Wow, you just have so much energy in your seventh and your eighth house, so a lot of relationship stuff there. So this is one of the most defining months of the year for you, I feel like, because the eclipse is falling directly on that first house for you, which is self, and seventh house partnership, particularly for those of you who are Virgo rising. But this is that axis of, me versus we energy, independence versus union, control versus surrender, right? So this is not a subtle month for you guys. It reshapes how you relate and who you are within your actual relationship. So the eclipse for you guys in that first house of your itself, its personality, it's your physical body, its identity, its independence, it's the version of you that the world meets when they first meet you, and just, before they get to really know you, the perception of other people. It's the path that you're walking on. And so that South Node eclipse there is going to release some things. So it's as they typically do. So this is like letting go of an old version of yourself, changing your appearance or your presentation, right, to people, or how it is that you show up in the world, realizing that you've over-identified with being, the very Virgoian responsible one, right? Feeling very emotionally raw or exposed. Psychologically, you guys often carry this energy of hyper responsibility. I've talked about this a bunch of times before. You carry a lot of self-criticism and very high standards for self, and hyper independence as a coping strategy. saying like, I don't need to be in a relationship. I don't need anybody. I'm just going to do it my way. And people just don't understand me anyway. So it's easier if if I just do it, right? So this is, you guys tend to do this. So March is going to be doing this very interesting, um, this subtle shift on you. Now that Pisces eclipse, it's going to be happening in the seventh house of marriage and long-term partnerships, contracts as well. Your energetic output at work is also very seventh house. Open adversaries are seventh house as well. Any kind of one-on-one dynamic, though. It could even be like a best friend. It could be your doctors. It could also be an individual who you might be in a legal entanglement with, right? It would be the other person, right, that you are in some sort of legal situation with. But with that Pisces energy there, relationships become very emotional, right? With whoever it is that you're dealing with in that house. Very spiritual, very compassionate, but at times a little confusing and blurry, right? Because it's Pisces and Pisces is ruled by Neptune. Neptune does rule your seventh house. So that could be kind of confusing. Now, the eclipse does plant a new seed in that part of your life. So the way that this can manifest is a new relationship begins, a current relationship deepens for many of you. You could be signing a contract, maybe you're getting a new job, signing some sort of contract. A karmic partner returns as well. Don't be surprised there. Just be careful with that one. A partnership dynamic shifts permanently. So you could quit a job or you could request a divorce, or the shift could be that you're getting married or it's a permanent thing though. It's like there's not going to be any sort of revisiting after this one, right? So just something to keep in mind. But that Pisces energy absolutely asks for a little bit of surrender in that space. Virgo rising, you guys tend to approach relationships very analytically. You're very analytical, you're very smart, very analytical with your relationships. But this eclipse is saying that you cannot logic your way into intimacy. And that could be a little scary for you, right? You can't do it. You're being asked to soften up in that way. Soften up. Yeah. When I was thinking a moment ago about what is March doing to you? The image in my mind, and I know this sounded weird, so I didn't say it, but I feel like it's kind of appropriate. It's almost like March is massaging you to soften up a little bit. It's like, okay, Virgo, relax your shoulders, relax your fears, relax needing to be in control of everything. Do you know what I mean? So it's this first house, seventh house dynamic is going to be very lit up. And so one identity ends, right? So that a new a relational pattern can begin. So like one way that you know to do relationship, one way that you know to do things is going to end, and you're going to be welcoming in, maybe not with such open arms, but it's going to feel a lot more comfortable for you. Because especially if you know yourself, right? Especially if you've been hyper independent, right? Maybe you haven't been in a relationship for a long time, or when you do date, it's like it doesn't end because they don't have those boxes checked or whatever, whatever it is. Or even it could be the same thing applying to like your energetic output at work or even to a job, right? A contract. If you've been very emotionally self-contained, if you've been avoiding vulnerability, if you've been over functioning in relationships, I know so many of you who have, right? This month eclipses it, and you may realize like I don't have to do everything alone. Doesn't have to be like that. This is relationship karma. It's not punishment, but it's evolution. This is what's happening. Now, at the same time, we do have that Saturn conjunct Neptune that's happening in that eighth house of shared finances, of debt, taxes, other people's money, sexual intimacy, emotional merging, trust, psychological depth. The eighth house is also trauma, though. So Saturn brings boundaries. Neptune melts away any kind of illusions that could be going on, right? So when we bring these two together in the eighth, financial entanglements become a lot more clear. Sexual boundaries are defined, which is good. Emotional dependence patterns that you've been dealing with surface, right? And in that is the whole like trust and wanting to be in control so that you don't get hurt, all of that, right? The hidden trust issues become very visible this month. Very hard to not see them. So you can feel like you need clarity, right? So you could feel like you need clarity in how you and a significant other share. Now, keeping it real, it's in the eighth house. The sharing could have to do with an insurance payout, an inheritance. Um, maybe you've had a business with someone and you're deciding to dismantle and sort of, kind of go your own way. But there's something here in how you share that's going to be revisited because these energies are demanding financial honesty, emotional maturity, and defined expectations when it comes to all eighth house things. So again, shared resources, being really honest about your trauma, being really honest about being very honest. Oh, be super honest on your taxes. I want to just give you that heads up for those of you who are, putting your taxes in here in the States, right? We have till April 15th to do our taxes. This is not a good year to like play around with that. I just want to say, but it can feel heavy initially, but if, it stabilizes what's real, which is good. If something cannot survive structure in this kind of energy, it ends up dissolving, right? So the question marks, no, no, no. The lack of clarity. But there's a difference between having structure and then this obsessiveness with needing to be in control. Obviously, there's got to be some balancing out here. Now, Jupiter is in Cancer for you guys in the 11th house. He's finally going direct this month, right? So he comes out of retrograde on the 10th. He's going to be in that post shadow for anywhere from a week or two, right? But you're going to start to feel the lightening up as we approach towards the end of the month. But remember that 11th house it's friendships. We always say friendships, so social networks in general. All of our like professional alliances are very 11th house. Our long-term dreams, goals, and gains, all very 11th house. Support systems, 11th house. So Jupiter retrograde here may have brought social reassessment, friendships in your friend groups, really reflecting in a very honest way on who supports you in your life. You know what I mean? Like who's Team Virgo and who's not. Who's sticking around just because of what you can do for them. But that's always vice versa too. Who are you tapping into because you have a need for them, right? And for no other reason, right? So all of this can become very obvious. But when Jupiter goes direct, this strengthens all your support systems. Very likely that some sort of helpful ally appears. This could have to do with work, somebody helps you out in work. Some sort of networking that you're involved in ends up improving. It's a great energy to network in. Hope returns. It's just a lighter energy once Jupiter goes direct, right? This mid-month. Psychologically, you're releasing this hyper independence, right? Support increases. The universe mirrors your willingness to receive. And this is an absolutely positive thing for you. Now, we're also dealing with this Uranus energy in Taurus, which is happening in your ninth house with ninth house travel opportunities, right? Long distance, educational shifts are also ninth house, very connected to father energy, the law, legalities, local governance, religion, organized or otherwise, politics, ninth house. What else is ninth house? Rigid doctrine, social expectations. You're breaking free from all of that. You philosophically, you're waking up. There is going to be a lot of shifts here, and this supports your that relational evolution having to do with like letting go of, recognizing that needing to this hyper independence is not the way to go. This supports it, right? Because as your belief shifts, your relationship patterns are also going to be shifting. Now we also have a Pluto in Aquarius for you, which is in your sixth house, which is your intent. This can create an intense focus on your health, mental, physical, emotional. This could equal work restructuring, power shifts in the workplace, purging some sort of toxic routine because your identity shifts, so do your habits, and obviously it's kind of like a domino effect, right? Now, Pluto just by himself, he's not opposing anything, he's pretty okay, but he is sextiling that Saturn and that Neptune energy. And what else is he sextiling? Yeah. He's going to be sextiling, well, at least in the third week, he will be sextiling the sun, so it'll be a really good week. But Saturn, Neptune, also Vulcan is in there, in your eighth house. So there's a lot of support when it comes to pruning things out, creating some healthy, balanced structure, purging some sort of toxic routine. Um, that's going to be happening there. Okay. So just generally, right, for this month, when it comes to, again, evolutionary astrology, so it's like the psychological lens through which we're looking here. Early in the month, you could feel very exposed emotionally, right? So you feel a little sensitive. Um, Wondering like who exactly are you, right? This identity uncertainty. If you're feeling like that, that's totally fine because it's very on brand, right? Feeling more vulnerable than usual. Very on brand. It just is. Now we have mid-month. The eclipse is going to be shedding that old definition of self. And once Jupiter goes direct from March 10th on, this is going to be very strengthening for your social support, for networking, having to do with your goals and gains. Now, keep in mind that that is going to be opposing that fifth house energy, right? And that fifth house energy, where your Capricorn is, there can be some kind of tension or just worry. Doesn't necessarily have to be tension because it's Jupiter, but it can just be some worry about something connected to one of your children, okay? Especially your oldest child or your only child. And it could just be worrying about their future, or it could just be you being worried about doing something for them or something connected to them, right? I don't see this as being like a really negative thing, but if something is feeling, I just see this as being like something uncomfortable is going to have to be dealt with, having to do with your oldest child or your only child this month. And it could just be very personal, where your child is just living their life and they're fine, but there's something that's either uncomfortable that you're needing to come to terms with, or something that you're needing to do that you might not feel completely comfortable with. Something like that, okay? But we also have the eclipse later in the month is activating that partnership destiny. That could be very good for your employment, very good for relationship, very good for if you are needing to get a new group of doctors, if you're thinking about reformulating how it is um, that you do your work each day. Very good for that. Also, the eighth house is, those themes having to do with, maturity when it comes to intimacy, maturity when it comes to shared resources, maturity there. That's definitely going to be a thing that is happening for you. And you guys often survive by being very competent, by being super prepared, by being very self-reliant, and you're managing everything. It's like, I got it, right? But again, that hyper independence can block intimacy. So this month is really going to be teaching you about that you don't have to earn love through usefulness. You don't have to control outcomes to feel safe. You don't have to do that. That shared vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually a really nice strength. So you're releasing that hyper independence. You're learning relational interdependence, which I talk about a lot, right? I mean, we don't want to be codependent. We don't want to be too independent, right? This interdependence. That's when, people know that we care about them. That's the way to structure a really healthy relationship. And that is all about maturity. It's not a loss of autonomy. That's just, that maturation process that really wants to, and it doesn't matter how old we are. It has nothing to do with that, just in that realm. So, Virgo, I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hey Libra, I hope you guys are doing great. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. Woo, we got a lot going on in that sixth, seventh house. Are you guys feeling tired? Because I got this vibe coming at me through your chart, burnout and boundaries, right? I mean, March really does activate the sixth house, 12th house axis for you. So it's like work and rest, service and self, obligation versus release, perfection versus compassion. It's like, stress and release. Yeah, at the same time, because we do have a lot of energy lighting up that seventh house with that Aries energy. A long-term relationship is absolutely restructuring here. This is happening in that seventh house. So this month is about reclaiming energy and redefining fairness. And what does that actually look like? And what does that mean? So let's start by talking about this Virgo eclipse. It's going to be happening in your 12th house. That 12th house is the subconscious, it's hidden fears, it's self-undoing patterns, it's isolation, very connected to your mental health, suppressed resentment, spiritual retreat. 12th house is also the house of, well, it's the house of the hidden, behind the veil. Um, but it's also because Pisces is the landlord there and Neptune is the ruler. It is the house of disease and disease, and you do have Virgo in there. So whenever we get a big activation on this axis, we always want to just be watching our health a little more closely. Now, this doesn't have to mean, like something going on with one of your organs, because it's mental health as well, right? And with that Virgo energy there, this can manifest as internalized self-criticism, overthinking behind the scenes, quiet resentment that can absolutely grow, being harder on yourself than anyone else. You guys are good at that, but also secret burnout, right? I just feel like a lot of you have not been sleeping that well, right? Or it's like very fragmented, if that makes sense, you know? Um, but you have to be careful because you don't want it to wear your body down. You want to be very careful with that. Um, but anyway, so that South Node eclipse here is going to be bringing a lot of exposure, a lot of release. So some possible manifestations that can happen for you is an emotional breakdown that leads to a breakthrough. And you're like, wow, Jack, you say that so casually. Well, I don't mean it to sound casual, but I don't think it'll be a surprise to you either if that ends up being the manifestation for you. Obviously, it does depend on what else is going on in your chart, right? Some of you are going to be a little more susceptible to that than others, but the emotional breakdown is from the exhaustion, guys, right? And it's just like, I can't do this anymore. Whatever it is, it's like you're tired, you're shot, or you're just like, it's almost like a claustrophobic energy that you just feel like you have to break out of. And you realize, though, at the same time that you've been your own harshest critic, that, you're going to be actively letting go of guilt because a lot of you are also going through this thing where you're thinking about like the past 5, 8 years of your life. And you're like, why have I been doing that for these past years? What in the world was I thinking? Why did I waste my time with that? Whatever it is. And you really want to avoid that because you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Absolutely. Regardless of how you got there, right? But you're going to be focused on ending like any sort of like behind the scenes draining commitment, where you're always the one holding everything up. You're always the one holding things together, whatever it is, right? Great for therapy, great for spiritual awakening. This could be very good for any of this kind of clearing out anything that hasn't been healed, working on a lot of self-forgiveness because you're going to see how much energy you've spent trying to be a certain way. A lot of you've been spending it trying to be perfect, especially in ways that no one ever even sees. Libra, that's the thing. Trying to be perfect in ways that people don't even see, but you see, right? So this eclipse is saying to you that you're allowed to rest from the self-improvement. You're allowed to rest from being so hard on yourself. You don't have to have everything that's up in the air all together. You could just actually let them fall. Screw it, it's okay. You know what I mean? Deal with it later. But that's going to be very foundational energy for the month. Then we also have the Pisces eclipse happening in your sixth house of work responsibilities, your day-to-day work environment, employees, your coworkers, your health habits, mental, physical, emotional, your daily structure, service, time management. We exercise in the sixth house. Again, very connected to our health. And with that Pisces there, routines become very disorganized, overly sacrificial, overly draining, no boundaries. And with this eclipse though plants a seed in there for this new daily rhythm, right? Because you really haven't had one. I feel like a lot of you have been kind of all over the place. Like you're getting up and you're doing you, and you're checking the boxes off when it comes to doing what you have to do, but you're all over the place. Very fragmented energy, right? So some of you in that sixth house, you might be deciding to shift jobs. Some of you may be starting some sort of new health regimen. Maybe you are quitting some sort of really draining routine where you're like, hold on. I have these responsibilities. I'm constantly holding this. This cannot continue. So you're either delegating to somebody else. That could be very connected to that seventh house energy that's going on. Or like maybe you're saying to a partner, like, hey, you got to step it up a little bit. I can't be the only one holding all these things in the air. It could be that. You're reorganizing that schedule. You're setting limits at work. You're setting limits on how it is that you do your day to day. Now, keep in mind, you're going to at least feel like you're having a bit of a breakdown. And then it's like, okay, what's the solution to this? The solution is that I have to restructure things because Pisces in that six often sacrifices for other people. Does that sound familiar, Libra? Like you sacrifice for other people. And this eclipse is super powerful because it's asking if your daily habits and your daily responsibilities, are they nurturing you or are they draining you? Like how are you feeling at the end of the day? Because you're meant to create a schedule that honors your emotional needs, also your physical needs, right? Because your mental, physical, and emotional health are going to kind of be under the spotlight right now. So there's going to have to be a shifting around as to how things are actually done. Now, the sixth house, 12th house axis dynamic, again, that sixth house conscious service, the 12th house unconditional sacrifice. This is being lit up here. So this month is going to absolutely force balance, especially if you've been overdoing, if you've been overworking, people pleasing, suppressing resentment, ignoring your physical exhaustion, saying, I'll worry about it later, I'll rest in piecemeal, whatever it is. No, no, no. You can't continue this pattern, Libra. You can't continue. Burnout is the signal, boundaries are the solution. And that's the only, straight up what it is. You can't keep doing this. You have to sit down and figure out how you can make those changes. Okay. Because you don't want to increase the burnout. It's going to absolutely impact your health with all these energies in the sixth house. I'm telling you, you don't want to do that. The sixth house is health. Pisces is about hidden things that we can't see. Neptune rules your sixth house. So you don't want anything manifesting there, right? So really trying to again, restructuring that day to day. Now, we're also dealing with that Saturn conjunct Neptune. I did that video last month and it's still going on. In that Aries energy in the seventh house of marriage, of long-term partners, contracts, one-on-one dynamics, open enemies, everything that I said. And Saturn brings structure and accountability. He likes to prune. He goes in, he wants to prune the things that are getting in the way of a truly healthy experience in that part of our life, right? That's what he does. He comes in and he prunes. And Neptune dissolves, right? Dissolves illusions. So when these two are together in that seventh, as I mentioned last month, unrealistic relationship expectations fade away. Where it's just like, if only my wife, or if only my husband were this way, that way, or if only my boss was this way, or if only, anything having to do with that contract. Codependent patterns can certainly surface in this area. Romantic idealism is tested as well. If you've been really holding on to the fact that, there's not enough romance, we don't do enough things together, I don't feel very connected. And this is tested. I mean, this is tested, but at the same time, whatever is by all rights, realistic versus unrealistic. You know what I mean? Like realizing how your partner is, right? Now, your commitments after this realization, they're either going to dissolve or they're going to become even deeper, where you're either going to move into a space of acceptance. And look, that doesn't mean that you're sacrificing what you ideally want. That's not what it is. It's about maybe changing the scale that you assess your relationships or even your job, saying, okay, it's not perfect in this area, in this area, in this area, but it does have this benefit, this beautiful quality, that. So, and it's recognizing both sides. So it's recognizing the good with the bad and not hyper focusing on the bad. I hope that makes sense, because the last thing I want to do is not make you feel validated in how it is that you might be feeling in that area, things that you're identifying as problems. That doesn't mean that those problems are not real and shouldn't be addressed, but maybe you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Or some of you may say, nope, I reached my limit, because it depends on what else is going on in your chart. But there is certainly a shift there, right? Because you are absolutely going to just be saying to yourself, I can't pretend that this is balanced, because it's not. Right? You're going to be saying that to yourself, right? And you naturally prioritize harmony. You just do. You don't like confrontation. You like things to be harmonious. You guys like such a nice energy. But a harmony without boundaries becomes what? It becomes self-erasure. And I feel like I've been talking to you guys about this for the past few months. You want to be so careful of self-erasure. So this transit really is asking for equal effort, clear agreements, really honest conversations, and a very mature commitment, right? Mature, meaning you're not always going to get your way, but they can't always get their way, right? It's got to be the two of you making decisions for yourselves, not allowing the whole family situation to get involved and all of that, right? You want to be super careful of that. Especially over these next couple of months, okay? Just be careful. Love your family, but understand, right? Boundaries have to be exercised here, okay? Now, if something survives this transit, I could tell you it's going to be like strong as steel. But if it doesn't, it will dissolve. It just will. Now, we do have the Jupiter energy very high in your chart in the 10th house in Cancer, still retrograde until March 10th. Then, yay, he's finally coming out. So, professional recognition in that 10th house, leadership opportunities, emotional confidence, your career, your public reputation. This very much supports boundary setting, which is why I love this energy. Jupiter in the 10th house, Jupiter does not love boundaries, but in the 10th house, it's like, Papa Jupiter is coming in and saying, sit down, you little whippersnapper. You have to create boundaries. I know you just want everyone to get along and everything just come and go, everything be easy peasy. That's Jupiter, right? And Saturn is like, no, 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 right? Saturn rules your 10th house. Saturn rules it. So, when you feel supported by people, you stop over accommodating privately. Support is very important to you, but the right kind of support has to be there, and you need to communicate that, okay? But that Jupiter energy in the 10th house can absolutely be expanding you. Yeah, well, the 10th house is also the manifestation of mother energy. So once Jupiter goes direct, let me just see here. Once Jupiter goes direct, let me just see what's opposing this. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be opposing that fourth house. And, there could be some strain and stress having to do with mom. If your mom is still with you, some stress having that opposition to the fourth house. Where there could be this push-pull energy where your mom might be looking to you for some sort of life direction. She might be very reliant on you. That kind of energy can manifest as well. So boundaries, right? Boundaries are really important. Doesn't mean you don't love her. It doesn't mean that, you guys aren't still getting along. Boundaries are not mean they're healthy. They are healthy, okay? And I know you guys have a really hard time with that. You have a hard time confronting things, confronting people. It's difficult. It's not easy, but this month really is pushing you to establish again those clear relational boundaries. Now, Pluto is still in Aquarius, shaking up that fifth house, intensifying, adding a lot of emotional depth, having to. Now, what's interesting here is there's a lot of passion that's being very lit up this month in that fifth house, having to do with falling in love, love affairs, romance. I mean, so this could be manifesting a couple of different ways. Okay, let me just think about this. Okay, because um, for a lot of you, you may be really rethinking romance and love, right? And wanting something very, very different if you're in a relationship. And so this obviously is going to be feeding into that seventh house thing, but it's in a sextile. So I do feel like that emotion that you're feeling about wanting a relationship to be different is going to be very, very highlighted. You can also be finding yourself falling in love with somebody from a different culture or somebody who's just uniformly different than you and in one way or another. But it could bring such intense passion this month to a child, to a creative project, to having your own business. These are all these fifth house things. Planning an awesome vacation. Really nice energy there. Okay. Very, very, very beautiful energy. Now it is opposing your part of fortune. So you could be feeling very fortunate about, maybe your kids or feeling generally happy, but yet you could feel this thing where, okay, I'm happy enough now, but am I going to be happy like this forever? And then looking at that relationship or looking at that job. And it's not that you're not appreciating the moment. It's not that you want to throw everything away, but that nagging kind of energy, you're not going to be able to ignore it anymore. So you're going to be really craving like this authenticity, authentic passion, you know, because you do the polite harmony really well, Libra. Like you guys do it really well. Meaning it's not that you want it, but you know how to do it, right? So if you're in a relationship, you know how to maintain that polite harmony. It's like, okay, honey, yeah, going along. But meanwhile, inside you're just like, I wish this was something else, right? And so the real psychological messaging, okay, of course, we always have to look at it through that because I do evolutionary astrology for the month for you guys. Early on is fatigue. You're tired early on. There's a lot of internal self-criticism. There's a lot of emotional overwhelm. I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm saying that to be straight up and honest. It's not going to stay like that. By mid-month, we have that eclipse that's going to be releasing this hidden guilt. Jupiter direct is going to strengthen your confidence overall. I like it much better as we even get to the later in the month. That eclipse is going to be resetting your daily routine. Relationship realism sharpens. And I love this for you because I feel like you guys are going to just be straightening out what it is that you actually need, moving into a place of acceptance, which is good. And again, that doesn't mean settling. We really have to, just as a people, understand like what is the difference between recognizing that nothing is perfect and this idea of then settling. We have to really understand the divide there. A lot of people throw away perfectly good relationships and even friendships and even jobs because I'm just not happy. Okay, well, is there anything good about it? And that's really what you have to step back and ask yourself. And if the answer is no, if the answer is this brings me more unhappiness than anything else, this is toxic. If you force me to write, three good things about this person or this situation, I literally can't come up with it. Okay, that's different, right? But asking and answering those questions really important, okay? But listen, for you guys, the way you guys are wired, this is a real thing this month, and you're wired for fairness. You're wired for beauty and equity because you guys are the scales, right? But fairness without self-protection becomes imbalance. So this month is teaching you a few lessons, right? That you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't do it. And that peace without boundaries That's resentment. That ends up breeding resentment. And accommodation without reciprocity is self-betrayal. There's got to be two-way streets, not one-way streets, right? You stop over accommodating this month, Libra. You have to. And when you do, your health improves, your work stabilizes, your day-to-day stabilizes, your relationships become a lot more clear. That burnout that you're feeling at the beginning of the month, that becomes the catalyst for self-respect by the end of the month. Okay, my friends, I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey, Scorpio, hope you guys are doing great. Let's unpack March. For you guys, let's get into the fifth house, 11th house axis is being lit up. So you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. That 11th house, this is going to be a dynamic between like personal joy, that fifth house, and group belonging, your individual creativity and collective identity, romance versus friendship, authentic expression versus social approval, right? Really looking at your happiness now and realizing your goals and gains and what it is that you want to be doing over the next 10 to 15 years. So you have all of this going on, but at the same time, relationships are unpredictable. With that seventh house, there's a lot of restructuring going on there. With Uranus is at beginning of the month, he's at 27 degrees, then he moves to 28 degrees by the end of the month. That Taurus energy, he's really getting ready to go into that eighth house. But there's a lot of unpredictability there having to do with relationship, and there's a health restructuring that's going on because of all that Aries energy. And you have Chiron, you have Eris, you have Venus, you have Saturn, you have the Sun until towards the end of the month it goes into the Sun, um, into Aries energy, and then you have Neptune there. So yeah, there's a lot going on, right, in that health arena. So you're quietly reshaping your daily reality. And this is a month really where you guys choose joy over control, right? This idea of anybody having control over you is just not going to fly anymore. So let's talk about the Pisces eclipse first. This is happening in that fifth house, having to do with romantic relationships, any creative projects, could be connected to art, performance, anything that's creative. Children, risk taking as well, pleasure, play, entrepreneurial activities, authentic self-expression, just being absolutely truly who you are. And with this Pisces here, your creative and your romantic life becomes emotionally heightened. It becomes very spiritually charged, right? And that eclipse plants a new seed in that space, in that house. So for a lot of you, you could be beginning a new relationship, starting a new romance, rekindling some kind of passion with somebody from the past. A lot of you could be starting a new creative project. Some of you might be getting pregnant. Some of you might be opening a business. Um, any sort of emotional healing through art or the arts, right? Where you're just finding yourself gravitating towards those things. Pisces energy dissolves control, right? It does. And for you guys, you often prefer emotional intensity and depth, but also control, right? So this eclipse that we're having this month says you cannot control inspiration. You can't control love. You can't control other people in a way that, or any outside energy, you can't control how it comes to you, right? You have to feel it. You can't control. You have to feel it, right? And then try to draw it. And if you're dealing with a relationship and that person is acting in a certain way, and I know we all know this, right? We can't control other people. But this month it's going to become really, really obvious to you that you can't control whatever that other person has going on, right? But you have to feel joy regardless of that. And then evaluate where you're going to work from, do what you're going to do from there. Now, this Virgo eclipse in that 11th house of friends, professional networks, again, long-term goals, collective identity, social influence, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, stepchildren, grandchildren. That Virgo energy is in that 12th. It just naturally can create a situation where you overanalyze friendships, where you feel responsible for group dynamics. You could stay loyal to situations out of obligation, right? Fixing other people's problems, right? This could be a thing, right? But with this South Node eclipse here, there's a release, and this release can look like leaving a friend group, you know, outgrowing your professional alliances, realizing a long-term dream of yours, just in general, a dream, whether it's a job, a relationship, whatever it is, it no longer fits. You can easily find yourself reducing social obligations. You can be a little careful there, right? Because you guys can be very private. You can be very, because you like your own company, which is great. I definitely relate with that because I'm a Gemini sun, a Capricorn rising. And so I appreciate time by myself as well. But you guys have to be careful of not going too deeply into hermit mode, you know. But you're going to really be seeing where you've been managing others instead of enjoying yourself, worrying about other people and what other people are doing, right? Often in relation to you, but it's like, you know what I mean, like worrying about them. And this eclipse is like, is just saying, first of all, you don't need to earn belonging. You don't need to be any more than who you are. Don't let any energy, other energy, say otherwise and make you feel any other way. Because when you release these expectations, your fifth house creative spark reignites. It's good for the relationship with your children. It's good for your romantic connections. It's good for a business if you have one, but it's just generally good for your joy, releasing the expectations, releasing um, that critical eye as well on other people. And there's a lightness that comes with that, because that fifth house is that, again, that personal, very personal joy. The 11th house is that collective alignment. So there's a recalibration and balance there. So if you know, and you know yourself better than anyone, if you know that you've been prioritizing uh, group approval or the approval of somebody else over your own personal expression, or if you've been staying in something very loyal, right? Very loyally, that's quite frankly outdated. It's past its expiration date. If you've been suppressing creative desires for social stability, this axis is going to break the pattern this month because you're meant to reclaim your individuality now. And not only that, have, really exercise extreme self-respect as well. This is very important. Now that Uranus in the seventh house, again, he's got like one leg in Gemini already, right? Um, Next month he goes into Gemini. So he's been in your seventh house of partnerships and contracts since 2018. And this is the last month forever in your lifetime that you will deal with Uranus in your seventh house. And I know a lot of you are like, good riddance. Um, like a lot of like partnership disruptions, awakenings when it comes to relationships. So likely what's going on here. But just remember the seventh house says govern marriage and long-term partnerships and contracts, one-on-one relationships, your doctors, anyone that you are in a legal entanglement with, that person would be in the seventh house. Seventh house is also your energetic output at work, your forward-facing energetic output at work. So Uranus there can bring shifts here, unexpected relationship developments, breaking free from stagnant dynamics, right? If you're in that relationship and that person, it's just not growing, you guys are in the same place. This is really, I will tell you this is going to be, protracting this out a little bit. It is not going to survive past August of 2026. If it's not stagnant, if you're totally comfortable and content and they're totally comfortable, then that's an agreed stagnation. We don't call that stagnation. We call that being in a good place, right? Stagnant is when there should be growth, there should be movement, and there's not equally from both people, not no lip service, action, both people showing up equally. Okay, that's got to be the case, right? um Otherwise, not right away, but I'm telling you, it's just going to be like an onion peeling away. It's going to become a lot easier, a lot easier, a lot easier. It's not going to be, I'd be very surprised. Now, I don't know you or your chart, right? And I'm saying this just based on the general transits here. Very difficult for stagnant, convenient connections that lack authenticity to last beyond August of 2026. That next eclipse, because this eclipse is going to start at that next eclipse season from August into September. That's going to nip you in on that side. And this is the thing. It's very supportive. So where if you find that you've been in a situation that you just have not been able to break out of, that's going to be really a lot more comfortable. But yeah, and you're gonna find also if that's happening as well, don't be surprised if like somebody new comes in and that person is very unconventional, let's just say, right? Very unconventional partner. Yeah, I do want to say like this eclipse, it does not necessarily mean separation, but it does mean awakening. You're waking up. You're not allowing yourself to drink the Kool-Aid anymore if somebody's been feeding you some Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying there, right? So a partner changing dramatically can absolutely happen. If they don't change, it's going to dissolve. This could also manifest as you demanding more freedom. Relationship dynamics may feel really unpredictable right now. A sudden new connection could come in. Uranus really forces authenticity. You have to remember what Uranus does, what Uranus is about. He's about revolution to free us. He frees us. He wants authenticity. He doesn't want lip service. He doesn't want any, And it's getting ready to go into your eighth house of we energy, intimacy, sharing, right? So if a relationship restricts your expression, it destabilizes. If it restricts your ability to express yourself and live authentically the way that you wish to live in a relationship, it destabilizes. If it supports your evolution, it becomes more dynamic. Okay. So and you'll know where you're at. Now, Saturn conjuncting Neptune in Aries, I did a lot about them last week. This is happening in your sixth house of health, of work responsibilities, time management, physical discipline, employees, colleagues. What else is the sixth house? But your mental, physical, and emotional health. And Saturn brings a lot of structure there. Neptune dissolves denial. So together, health habits must mature. Work boundaries become a lot stronger. Escapism in daily life ends. It has to end. Physical discipline becomes necessary. So especially if anything is connected to your health. So anything like that you're doing. Now, Neptune in there, I do want to say Neptune rules addiction. Okay. And in the sixth house, once we have Saturn and Neptune in there, an addiction can start to become a real problem for you to the point where you need to stop it. And you're going to have so much help to do it because Saturn wants to prune what is not good for you. Okay. And with Neptune ruling that addiction, this is an excellent 6-month period to really think about making some changes there, whether it's alcohol, drugs, smoking, whatever, even overeating, anything like that. Whatever it is, whatever the addiction might be. Addictions wear so many hats, right? But you have a lot of very supportive energy. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to wake up and it's just going to be, oh, easy peasy. It means that the resolve will be there and you're going to have a lot of energetic support to stay on path. That's not always the case, right? Now, you could choose to ignore it and keep doing your thing. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that there are some points in time where the energy is more supportive than others, right? So it's, because you're going to be realizing that you can't keep running on, on fumes. You can't keep running on intensity alone, right? When it comes to anything, intensity in your relationships, intensity for a job, you can't run on intensity alone, right? Because you guys tend to push through exhaustion. You really do. And this transit is saying that your body demands consistency and not crisis energy, right? This health discipline is going to become very non-negotiable. It really is, because your health is going to end up becoming a problem. And I want to just say this straight up. I am not looking to be scary. Okay, a lot of you guys have worked with me privately. You know I'm not about that, right? But I have to be honest. You have Chiron in there until the end of next year. You have Saturn in there. Saturn slows things down and he demands you doing the right thing. If you're not doing the right thing, Neptune in there is going to expose something that's going on in the house of health. Now, it's in the sign of Aries, right? So Aries rules the physical body. So suddenly you could have some sort of, ear, nose, throat thing, something going on with the right eye, anything having to do with your shoulders, your back, anything having to do with the physical element. There could be some sort of breakdown, there. I don't want to overspeak this because we also have Uranus and Taurus very connected to, the immune system is very connected to the thyroid, and it's going into the eighth house, and the eighth house is where, things that have been hidden kind of come to the surface. So, you really want to watch your health. And the thing is, keeping yourself in anything that's not balanced and healthy for you, whether it's a job or relationship or whatever, I don't want you to think that that's happening in isolation, because it's not like your job is over here and your relationship is over here and then there's your body. It's not working like that. Like, because of all the energies that you have going on here in that sixth house, there's a real somatic response to your stress, and so just something to keep in mind. Now, we do have Jupiter in Cancer. That's happening in your ninth house, finally going direct. He's been retrograde. He's going direct finally on the 10th of the month. Just give him a week or so to come out of that post shadow. But Jupiter moving, going direct in the middle of the month is really going to be very supportive for all ninth house things: spiritual growth, travel, publishing, marketing, advertising, education, faith restoration, anything to do with politics, law, legalities, governance. It's the manifestation of father energy. This really does beautifully enhance your fifth house creativity because it's trining that energy. And your worldview is expanding, your self-expression deepens. You could, once Jupiter goes direct, great for your relationship with your children, great energy to meet somebody new, great energy for, so good for travel. So good for travel. And just looking at this Uranus getting out of the seventh, you know what? Honestly, Scorpio, if you can go on vacation, you're probably going to meet somebody. If you're looking to be in a relationship with somebody, you can meet somebody abroad from a different culture. That could certainly happen. It's just that would line up here. Again, I don't know what's going on in your personal chart, but just generally speaking, very nice energy there. Now, that Pluto in your fourth house, this is still transforming your family dynamics, that emotional security, living situations, psychological roots. Now, this month, there is a deepening here. You're building a stronger internal base from which like creativity can flow. You're getting a lot more serious about needing to manifest some sort of change in that area. So having to do with the fourth house, home, property, real estate, having to do with your emotional security, having to do with connections to your first family. I do want to say you want to check on the health of your siblings. With that Pluto energy in the fourth house, because nothing big, but with the Aquarius in there, they could be struggling with some like weird autoimmune kind of situation, some sort of flare up, whatever. So, if you're friendly with your siblings, certainly check in on them there. But something is going to become a lot more clear, and I just want you to know that everything will become even a lot clearer once the summer hits, Scorpio, because once the summer hits and Jupiter goes into your 10th house, it is going to be opposing the fourth house. So that could really motivate a move. Okay, that could absolutely motivate a move. So if you are thinking of moving, you might want to just start doing the research now, but you're probably not going to be, pulling the trigger on that until the summer into the fall. But for this month, again, just expect early in the month, just feeling a little like your shoes are a little too tight. this kind of energy, right? This creative longing, this longing for love, this longing for joy, feeling the social dissatisfaction, recognizing there's so much unpredictability in relationship, wanting something to be different with one of your kids. That's all very real. That's all right. So I just want to validate that, and I want you to understand that that's very on brand for the energy right now, right? But then mid-month, we have that eclipse is going to be releasing outdated friendships, but along with that, shaking the dead wood off the tree could certainly be that. But this could also be having to do with like the next 10 to 15 years of your life. You're recognizing where you're going to be, where you want to shift into, what you want to shift into. And once a Jupiter goes direct in the sign of Cancer in the ninth house, very nice energy because Jupiter is in his domicile, in the ninth house. You're going to feel a lot more optimistic about things. So that's really good. Excuse me. And then later in the month, that solar eclipse is going to be activating a new romance for a lot of you, a new business, creativity. This could be some sort of health situation solidifies. You get in front of something. There could be a pregnancy. There could be, um, what else? You could also just, just in a very mundane, like very simple, you could just start doing something like a habit, hobby, not habit, hobby that you really love and you feel very connected to, and it enhances your joy in one way or another. Now, for you guys, a lot of times you guys do associate, and I just want to have like a closing comment here. A lot of times you guys associate power with emotional control, right? And it's just the way we're all made specific, right? To what energy it is that we need to manifest in this life. But control can absolutely end up suppressing your joy, Scorpio, right? So this month is teaching you that joy does require vulnerability, and creativity requires taking a risk, and love requires openness and requires honesty. Even if you've been very open, maybe somebody else hasn't been very open with you and you're not willing to tolerate that anymore. So you are choosing joy over control. You're not wanting anyone to control you. If somebody's calling all the shots, you don't have control over things, that's not going to sit well with you anymore. And in doing so, relationships become a lot more authentic and creativity becomes a lot more alive, and your health will ultimately become a lot more stable. And this is a creative rebirth through surrender. This is looking at relationships through a different lens, recognizing that you don't have to have so much control. You just don't have to. Because it's that vulnerability and it's that giving up and it's that surrendering that ends up really allowing the floodgates to open, having to do with support and love and connection, right? All right, my friends. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Sagittarius. I hope you guys are doing great. Let's talk about March. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. So, for you guys, this month is very connected to your emotional foundation, but also realigning yourself with how you connect to people in general, because this is activating your fourth house, 10th house axis. These are angular houses. And when the angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10, when those are activated, we have to act. So this is really looking at your public life versus your private life, your home versus your career or the face that you show the world, your emotional security, which is very fourth house, and that 10th house reputation, your inner foundation, which is very fourth house, and that outer achievement. Really looking at that internal, external kind of energy. Where are you now? Where are you looking to go? How do people see you? A lot of you are going to be making some big changes in how people actually see you. This is a restructuring month for you. What changes privately is going to ripple out professionally, or at least ripple out in the way that people view you. You're redefining what home means, both internally and externally this month. Now, we do have this Virgo eclipse that's happening in your 10th house, career, reputation, public role, authority, status, responsibility, relate your relationship with achievement. What does it mean to actually make it, right? What does it mean? Now, through another lens, widening the aperture a little bit, that 10th house also represents the manifestation of mother energy. Now, with that Virgo on the 10th, you likely experienced yourself when, in your career, you can be a bit of a perfectionist, right? You may even overwork. You're very hyper responsible. You can worry about very much so your public image, fear of making mistakes. You don't want people to point them out. Even if, depending on what else is in your chart, your own birth chart, you may find that you do have some humility, but there is a lot of pride there. You want to be viewed in a certain way, right? Now, this South Node eclipse here signals this culmination or a release. And for you, this can mean leaving a job, restructuring responsibilities, ending some sort of public role, releasing the need to appear competent at all times, recognition followed by reevaluation. It could certainly be that. But it's this very high in the chart kind of manifestation. So psychologically, you may realize that your career identity has been built around proving yourself in one way or another. And this eclipse is saying you don't have to earn worth through productivity. That doesn't have to be a thing, right? There's something about your public identity is shifting right now, not necessarily dramatically, but in a meaningful way, in a way that really matters. It could just simply be, um, the way they view you, the way they think of you, the way, whatever it is. You just don't have to hold up any sort of facade anymore. And the thing is, I don't even feel like you've even realized that you were doing it, right? There's no malice in this at all, but it's just realizing that it's time to let your guard down in a certain way and not worry so much, really having to do with what other people think. Now, we also have this Pisces eclipse in the fourth house, which is home, property, real estate, family, ancestry, emotional roots, your inner security, your psychological foundation. And this eclipse plants a seed here. So there's some sort of seed being planted. So there could be some sort of deep consideration having to do with moving, renovating a home, some kind of family healing, change in household dynamics, maybe people moving in, people moving out, something like that. Sort of situation going on that front, some sort of emotional breakthrough. Doesn't have to have anything to do with it. Could just be deep emotional breakthrough that you have. You could just even be experiencing a deep desire to live differently, that you can't ignore, kind of thing. Because Pisces in the fourth brings a lot of emotional sensitivity around home already. So you may be feeling right now, man, I just need more peace. I need more meaning in where I live. I need safety, not just adventure, because you guys need adventure. You get bored pretty quickly, right? Because that's Sagittarius rising energy. You're very future oriented, right? And you're very freedom seeking. But this eclipse is asking you to build emotional roots and to be very grounded and rooted in that way. Now, this fourth house, 10th house dynamic is you're really going to be looking like, is your career supporting your emotional life, or is it replacing it? Is that goal that you have set in mind, that project that you're working on, that plan for your future, are you throwing so much of your energy in there and not enough into your emotional life? The two very different things, right? So just realizing, where is your compass actually, what is it focused on right now? Because that really is the compass house, right? I mean, the 10th house is the highest house in your chart. It's where you're going, right? And so really looking at that in a very honest way. Now, Saturn is conjuncting Neptune. So I did that video last month about it. In Aries, they're still conjuncting in that fifth house. Again, creative expression, creative projects, romantic life, your children, pleasure, self-expression, risk-taking, your hobbies, things you love to do. Saturn brings a lot of seriousness and responsibility, and Neptune dissolves illusions about joy, about romance. And so together in the fifth, creative projects become very disciplined. I think this is an excellent energy to like go back to the drawing board on a project if you want to punch something up, or if you want to create something in the first place, excellent. Romance becomes a lot more serious, and therefore it would ultimately be healthier. Parenting responsibilities can certainly increase here. It doesn't matter how old your children are, by the way, with this energy, because Saturn is involved. It doesn't matter if your children are in their 50s, it doesn't matter. Like there's something where they may need a little bit more of your help here. Illusions in love fade, illusions about romance, illusions about fifth house energies, it's the house of the entertainer, the house of like, being in front of people and getting a lot of attention, right? All of those illusions kind of fade, and you're going to start to feel like you need to take your creativity a lot more seriously, and you need to be very realistic in your relationships. And you're going to be feeling that very strongly this month, and this is going to be pushing you from that spontaneous pleasure, which you guys love, to very intentional joy, like being able to say, all right, let's sit down and let's plan this out. Let's see how we're going to do this, right? Very intentional. You enjoy freedom in romance. You enjoy lots of, freedom and creativity, but this adds structure. And because of that structure that's being added, it's going to have an element of longevity about it, which is very good. Now Jupiter is also stationing direct on March 10th, so we'll be feeling it more and more as March rolls out, because we have to give him like a couple of weeks to come out of that post shadow. But this is happening in your eighth house of shared finances, debt, inheritance, intimacy, emotional merging, psychological transformation. What else is the eighth house? Anxiety, a lot of anxiety, unhealed things from your past as well. Now, Jupiter retrograde here has probably brought like reviewing shared financial agreements, or emotional reassessment and intimacy, or doing some sort of therapy or deep inner work. You and a partner could be in like serious conversations about, how can we make things better? You might have started and then you fell away from it, whatever it is, but there was at least that recognition. And when Jupiter goes direct, the middle of the month, and just, all the way through to June, at which point he'll be going into Leo, shared finances will improve. This is a nice window for that. Emotional intimacy can absolutely deepen. Financial support may increase as well. A sense of psychological renewal emerges. This will be very nice for you. And this supports the fourth house shift as well. So just so that you know, because it's going to be trining from the eighth house. So an emotional connection improves. Home life stabilizes. Those deepest, most important connections for you will improve here. Now, we also have Uranus and Taurus in the sixth house. So he's getting so ready to go into Gemini. He's in his last month in the sixth house. He's been in there since 2018. He will never be in your sixth house again in your life. And I can hear you from here. Thank goodness. In that sixth house, now he's going into an angular house now, though. He will be going into that seventh. I'm going to do a separate video on that. But for now, for this month, he starts out at 27 degrees. Then he goes into 28 degrees by the end of the month. So that's sixth house. Wrapping things up in that space. A lot of you have probably sixth house energy since 2018. Something maybe having to do with your health, right? Hit the scene, depending on what else you have in your chart. There could have been a huge change having to do with your work situation, right? Huge change when it comes to your responsibilities, right? So that's what Uranus brings here. Sudden work changes, health awakenings, schedule disruption, innovative new routines. This complements the eclipse axis. It really does. Your daily life is evolving to support your emotional restructuring. This is so good for your health. It's so good for your daily responsibilities. It's good for you. This is a supportive placement. Now, that Pluto energy in Aquarius, still happening in that third house, and will be there for the next 19 years now, but having to do with this month, the way that it's activating, only because it's in a really nice sextile to this Pluto and Neptune energy, especially mid-month, because it's also going to be sextiling the sun. Very, very nice for communications, relationship with your siblings, any kind of contract, excellent. any sort of intellectual authority, right? You being an intellectual authority, people wanting to seek you out, people wanting to consult you for things. So you may become a lot more direct and powerful in the way that you speak, but also in the way that you think as well. So this is very, very nice for that 10th house shift, because whatever it is, it can absolutely impact that career sector and where it is that you're going, like moving forward, right? So just generally speaking, just psychologically, because I have to say that because I do evolutionary astrology, for the month of March for you guys, early in the month, a little bit of pressure having to do with your future. For some of you, career. For others of you, it's just like, where are we going? Some of you may be feeling very pressured in your marriage, but it's a pressure. There's an emotional restlessness. There's a questioning your direction, right? That's normal in the beginning of the month. By mid-month, there's some sort of tension as well, just like some sort of tension that's like hanging out in there. But by mid-month, that eclipse is going to be shifting your public identity quite nicely. Jupiter is going to be stabilizing shared resources. Good. And later in the month, as we finish out March, the that eclipse is going to be really planting a new a little seed in that home chapter right now. So again, a lot of you may be seriously considering either renovating, adding, somebody living with you, moving, something like that. But your creative responsibilities become a lot more clear. So this is a good thing, right? This is a good thing. You guys often define your life by exploration, by expansion, by giving things a shot, right? It's such a Sag kind of thing to do. But expansion without roots, without a rooted foundation, becomes really restless, right? So this month is teaching you that home is not confinement, that emotional security actually supports freedom. It doesn't hinder it. And your career is not your identity. It's what you do. It's not who you are. You're redefining home this month, not just physically, but psychologically. And when that inner foundation strengthens, your career decisions become clearer. Where you're moving next is going to become a lot more clear. Your creativity becomes a lot more purposeful. Your relationships deepen. You're building roots without clipping your wings, if that makes sense, guys. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Capricorn. I hope you guys are doing great. Let's talk about March. This month, all about truth, speaking your truth, speaking the truth that you've avoided. This is a month of activating that voice, foundational restructuring here. This is a really nice month for you because it's lighting up the third house, ninth house axis of facts and beliefs, your daily thinking. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. Daily thinking versus big picture philosophy, your communication versus your worldview, your doctrine, what you believe to be true. There's a real difference between like local truth and moral truth. And I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's going to be a thing where your truth is going to be a very important thing. Now, at the same time, the fourth house is going to be activated, right? Because Aries is in there. We have, Saturn and Neptune, and the sun is going to be going in there, and Venus and Chiron and Aries, they're all going to be going in there. And your second house with Pluto in there of money and self-worth. This is all going long-term restructuring, big long-term restructuring. So this is a month where speaking truth is going to happen, and you're going to be speaking a truth that you once avoided. Now, this Virgo eclipse in that ninth house, having to do with philosophy, religion, law, legalities, local governance, higher education, higher mindedness, publishing, launching, advertising, getting something out there, your life worldview, meaning, all right, just the meaning of life. And with that Virgo in there, really looking at right belief systems. You may recognize in yourself you have an overanalysis of moral choices. You have very high standards for truth. There's an innate fear of being wrong. That's why we tend to collect so much information. And with this South Node eclipse releases, letting go of a belief system, questioning religious and philosophical alignment. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean falling away from religion. You could actually be questioning it in a way where you're actually leaning more into it. For some of you, this could be ending a legal matter, completing an academic chapter, realizing that you've been living by some sort of inherited doctrine that's just not your belief system anymore. You know, it's like when you're born into something, you inherit that doctrine, that belief system, and then you grow and you live your own life and you create your own belief systems. And what a lot of people do is they will be a contrarian to that original belief system where they're just going to want to believe in the opposite of whatever it was that they were raised in just because they want to be contrarian. Your energy is really not like that. It's really more about reevaluating not only from your first family, but even just some doctrines that you picked up along the way and realizing very clearly where it is that you sit in all of that and what your truth is, you know. Um, so that, you know, really important here to understand because psychologically you may feel a little destabilized by doubt because and where is the doubt coming from? It's like saying to yourself, okay, well, this is what I really feel. This is what I genuinely believe, but I truly feel like the odd one out here. And what do I do with this truth and with this belief system? And do I have the right to feel this way? Is it okay that I feel this way, right? You know, as Capricorn risings, we tend to build our life structures around certainty and around responsibility. It's just simply the way that we're made. But this eclipse is teaching us something different, that, you know, we're allowed to evolve our worldview. We're allowed to evolve what we believe to be true. And what is likely going to happen is there's gonna be a bit of like a merging of different worldviews where the concoction that you end up with is going to be quite uniquely your own. But some sort of old narrative having to do with your worldview is going to change. And when the belief system shifts, your voice shifts as well. So there's a real shifting in your voice, and your voice is actually really, really powerful right now. So we have this Pisces eclipse as well, and this is going to be happening in the third house, having to do with communication and writing and speaking and contracts and short travel, you know, local travel, um, your daily mental patterns, how you think on the day to day, you know, those day to day things. So with Pisces here, your voice becomes a lot more intuitive, a lot more emotional, and a lot more spiritually guided, you know. And this solar eclipse, it plants a seed here. So what is the seed going to be for? The seed is going to be for speaking publicly, writing something meaningful, having a pivotal conversation, signing an important agreement, right? Healing sibling dynamics. For a lot of you, that's what's going to be going on. I just wouldn't recommend doing that until Jupiter comes out of retrograde, which will be on March 10th. Okay, but psychologically, you're going to stop filtering your truth through fear of judgment. You just are. Because you're likely going to realize that you've been silent about what you really believe. I know I have, guys. And you know I'm a Capricorn rising. I'm not saying this because it's how I'm feeling. I'm saying that because this is legit the astrology right now. But it's becoming a lot more clear to me, like what I believe and what I feel like I need to communicate. But this eclipse, it really does open the throat chakra, metaphorically, right, for us. And it's not about talking more, it's just about talking more authentically, you know, a lot more real, you know, to our own truth. Now, again, this third house, ninth house axis, that ninth house is about belief, and the third house is about expression. So if the belief shifts, then obviously the communication is going to follow as well. So this month may bring for you the idea of debate or a really difficult conversation. For some of you, it can bring publishing, it can bring teaching, or this clear shift in how others perceive your ideas. You are integrating wisdom into your voice. And this is the thing, not everybody's going to agree with you. That's okay. Because that's part of this lesson as well, is, because if a lot of people don't agree with you, then maybe you're wrong, right? I'm just saying, like, it's like the thought process, and then maybe you're wrong, and then maybe you have to like pull it back, but then you have to lean in and say you're probably not wrong, only because of the way these transits are. You just, not everyone's going to think the way that you do, and that has to be okay. Now, we also have that Saturn conjuncting Neptune in Aries. I did a video on this last month, but let me just speak a little bit more, having to do with how they may be playing out for this month. Again, the fourth house does represent home, real estate, family, parents, emotional security, ancestral patterns, inner foundation. Very connected to that early environment. And Saturn brings structure and responsibility, and Neptune dissolves illusions about family dynamics. So together, these two in there, again, family roles change, emotional boundaries are clarified. Some sort of living situation can restructure. But for a lot of you, a childhood narrative can be reevaluated. A lot of you may find that with Neptune and Saturn in that fourth house energy, you're thinking a lot about your childhood. You're going through the process. You're processing in a very different way, in a healthy way, a very healthy way. Could be bittersweet, could be nostalgic initially, but at the end, it's actually entirely healthy. But you may be feeling, right, especially by the middle to the third week of the month, where feeling like you need a stronger emotional foundation, because as Capricorn risings, we often suppress our vulnerability, and this transit's not going to let us do that, because this transit is asking us to confront any sort of inherited emotional patterns. Family structure is going to shift physically or psychologically. This is a foundational restructuring for the next decade, truly, right? So we have that, and then we have Pluto and Aquarius in the second house. The second house of income, assets, your sense of self, self-esteem. It's the overall health of your internal organs, it's your values, it's your financial control, it's your material security. And Pluto here intensifies that, right? Power dynamics about money or fear of loss or a desire for financial independence, and very much trying to rebuild wealth structures. So you may ultimately end up changing how you earn, right? And this is sextiling that Saturn Neptune energy along with the sun for a good part of the month. So this idea of changing how you earn, becoming a lot more strategic financially, great energy for that. You may face a financial power struggle, but you develop deeper self-worth here. Money for you becomes the symbol of autonomy. During this energy, you're redefining what security means, and you're figuring out a way of truly bringing it to yourself. Now, we also have this Jupiter in Cancer energy retrograde until the 10th. Once the 10th hits, going to be going direct. And he's hanging out with Kronos during so much of this transit. But partnership growth here, contracts, marriage, helpful advisors, really very nicely indicated, emotional support from others, meeting a doctor who's really healthy for you. Once he goes direct, seventh house is also your energetic output at work, right? So doing a job that you feel really connected to. And as your voice strengthens, relationships improve here. So you may find a partner who's super supportive and very encouraging of you, or a contract that really aligns with your truth and who you are and what it is that you want to do. Or there could be this sense of being supported in your expression and what it is that you have to say, right? As I'm speaking about telling the truth, but there are going to be people who do support you the same way as some people won't agree with you, but other people absolutely will. Which is a good thing. We have Uranus and Taurus also getting ready to go into that Gemini energy in your sixth house, getting ready, but still for the time. This month, he starts at 27 degrees, goes to 28 degrees in Taurus in that fifth house. So really the last month he's ever going to be in your fifth house again. He's been in there since 2018. So for many of you, this could lead to sudden relationship, sudden like romantic development. For others of you, creative breakthrough. Maybe you're brainstorming this amazing idea for something, a book, a creative project, a business, um, taking some sort of monetizable talent a lot more seriously. There could be a shift in parenting dynamic. This absolutely supports the third house eclipse. So your voice becomes more expressive, less guarded, more honest. People want to hear you. So for that, it's really nice. So just, the psychological messages, right, from March, again, because I am an evolutionary astrologer, so I always look at the psychology for this month. Early in the month, again, doubt around your belief system, career or moral questioning, like what am I actually supposed to be doing? I'm not sure. There can be emotional family tension. And this doesn't necessarily even mean you're arguing with anybody. This could just be all within yourself that maybe there's like a nostalgia building, or just some sort of something that you're dealing with, right? I just want to clarify that because I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, everybody be fighting. You ain't necessarily, everybody may be great, but within your own, you're like, oh, everybody's getting older, whatever, just feeling these things in a very sensitive way. By mid-month, that eclipse dissolves that outdated doctrine, that outdated belief system. And once Jupiter goes direct, your relationships are going to be a lot stronger. By the end of the month, that solar eclipse is going to activate communication breakthroughs, financial empowerment deepens. So that whole thing, that whole area is going to look much better, right? But just generally speaking, for you guys, a lot of times as Capricorn risings, we define our identity through, again, responsibility, achievement, control, composure, right? But sometimes that composure silences authenticity. It's like, let's not ruffle the feathers. Let's not do that, anything like that. But this month, March, is going to be teaching us that authority includes vulnerability and that stability includes evolution. And truth spoken calmly is power, right? So we're speaking truths that we once avoided. And when we do, our beliefs align with our voice. Everything falls into place quite naturally. Family foundations restructure, finances strengthen through clarity. This is an intellectual and an emotional maturation process, and it's all beginning the month of March. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey Aquarius, I hope you guys are doing great. Let's unpack March. I love this month for you. I really do. Identity rebirth, self-worth evaluation, and evolution. And a lot of it has to do with that Saturn and Neptune now being kind of snuggly and comfortable in a sextile to Pluto in your first house. So this March energy, though, it activates its second house and eighth house axis. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at your chart. And if I don't mean to confuse you with the houses, but a lot of you know about astrology, some of you don't. So I throw in the house placements, but just listen for the message, okay? So that second house, personal income versus shared resources, which is the eighth house, okay? Self-worth versus dependency, ownership versus obligation, and stability versus entanglement. Okay, those are kind of like the themes that are going to be happening. That second house, eighth house axis. That's what happens. Now, at the same time, that Pluto in your first signals a profound identity transformation, while that Saturn and Neptune that I just mentioned a moment ago in the third house restructures how you think and speak. So this is a month where value, financial, and psychological is all recalibrated, right? Everything is recalibrated this month. And it doesn't have to be loud. The shifts can feel even a bit subtle. Because there's a lot going on in like the first three houses of your chart, which are very personal, very personal, right? Not really including like too many people. But let's talk about this Virgo eclipse in the eighth house, again, having to do with joint finances, debt, taxes, inheritance, power dynamics, intimacy, psychological bonds. And with that Virgo energy in there, you can experience anxiety around shared money or an overanalysis of a partner's finances, or feeling responsible for others' stability, right? Or other people in your life, okay. This emotional hypervigilance, right? This is probably your your typical, the manifestation of that eighth house. Now, with the South Node eclipse here releasing in that space, it's very likely that some of you are going to be paying off or restructuring debt. You're going to be ending a financial agreement or separating finances in one way, or letting go of emotional dependency, or realizing that you've been carrying more than your share, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's in a business, whatever it is, because psychologically, you're recognizing this month where you've been undervalued, where you have allowed yourself to be undervalued by over investing in other people or over investing in promises, right? And this eclipse says, are you sharing from abundance? Are you sharing your energy and your resources from a place of abundance or from obligation? Right? There's something about the idea of dependency and the dependency pattern in your life that's going to be shifting this month. Now, the Pisces eclipse in the second house, which is about incomes and savings and assets and self-esteem and your personal value and security and what you own. Pisces here can blur financial boundaries, generally speaking. You may have experienced in your life like inconsistent outcome, or if your income is consistent, you spend emotionally, or undervaluing your own work, undervaluing yourself at work, right? Accepting less than you deserve. These are likely things, that you've experienced. Likely. Okay. Now, this eclipse, solar eclipse, planting seeds for some sort of new financial identity. So, for a lot of you, this can be a new income stream. For some of you, this is asking for a raise, changing how you charge for your services, charging more, right? Rebuilding your savings account, shifting your value system. Second house is very connected to our value system as well. But even deeper than money here, you're redefining your worth, because this eclipse is really telling you that your value is intrinsic, and it's not negotiated through sacrifice. It's just not. And it can't be based on performance either. You know what I mean? Like, the more you do, the more that they should like you. It's not about that. And the second house, eighth house dynamic, remember, the second house is what you own and the eighth house is what you share. So if you've been financially dependent, emotionally overmerged with another energy, if you've been undercharging for your services, if you've been accepting unequal financial responsibility, or if you've been allowing yourself to be like overlooked at work, this corrects that imbalance. It just does, because you are meant to stand financially and psychologically in a very autonomous way. But there's got to be this recognition that you've been undervalued. Now, that this Pluto energy in your first house, this is really like the stinger and everything, right? Is he's shifting your identity, right? Especially over the past year, and then he's going to continue for the next couple of years, especially the first few years when he's in a sign. When it comes to your personality and your body and your autonomy and your self-concept and the way you present yourself to people, the way that you exercise and illustrate your personal power here. Pluto brings this intensity and this depth and this psychological rebirth and a very magnetic presence, I might say, right? People vibe you differently than they did like a year ago, okay? A year and a half ago. Radical self-honesty, which is fabulous. So you may feel, I'm not who I used to be, right? It's that old identity shedding. You might not even be able to completely put your finger on how, but you know that you're different. You just know it. So you're likely, and this is the part that I like for you, you're probably going to become a lot more direct. This is good. Less tolerant of disrespect, a lot more strategic and more powerful in your presence. Because a lot of times, Aquarius, a lot of times you can not be those things. You can let yourself be invisible. Because you're out of the box and you're different, and you're very smart, and so you could stay very comfortably to yourself, and you could become used to people not seeing you, can be it can be a comfortable place for you, even though it's not comfortable really when you're going through it. But it just becomes something that, you grew to kind of accept. That's not happening anymore. It's just not happening. With Pluto going through your first house, I'm telling you, this is when the real change begins. I've been talking about the spring. Was I not? I've been talking about it for the past year, right? This is really when it begins, okay? You know, and it's very, very nice. It's you just the transformation really does support this financial reset when, again, when your identity strengthens, your self-worth follows, and then success follows that. Now, we still have that Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. Obviously, I did that separate video last month about it. It's happening in your third house of communication, writing, speaking, contracts, siblings, neighbors, neighborhood, extended family, and just really how you think on the day to day, right? Saturn brings discipline and he brings seriousness. Neptune dissolves illusion. So together, you become a lot more intentional in your speaking. Casual agreements are replaced by clear contracts. Mental fog will clear. You're going to stop saying yes automatically. Psychologically, you're going to stop minimizing yourself. You're going to stop minimizing your voice, right? You communicate value a lot more clearly. And this ends up strengthening that second house income growth, right? So the way that they're connected, really beautiful. Now, Jupiter in Cancer in your sixth house is still retrograde until March 10th. Once March 10th hits, he's going to go direct and he's going to stay direct until he goes into your seventh house Leo energy. I'll do a separate video on that. But for now, Jupiter in that space is really all about work opportunities for you, especially when he turns direct mid-month. So a lot of you may be welcoming some sort of new job opportunity, or you have really super helpful coworkers, or there's some sort of improved daily routine that you have. This is excellent for like working out, health improvement, feeling more motivated, Could be a little unmotivating while he's retrograde. So that's how come if you've been feeling really unmotivated. But once he goes direct in the middle of the month, you can start to feel your energy come back. This also, because of where he's situated, because he's trining your fourth house, this can support that financial evolution that I was talking about. And as your daily habits improve, so does your earning capacity. So there's a direct correlation between them. Now, Uranus is still in Taurus for the last month, right? Since 2018, has been in your fourth house and is finally leaving to never return to your fourth house again. He's already 8 degrees really into Gemini already, but he is still technically at that 27 and then 28 degree as the month progresses in Taurus in your fourth house. So this is where we're talking about unexpected moves continuing, right? Changes in family structure, emotional awakening, a very strong desire for independence at home, a very strong desire for autonomy when it comes to your emotional stability. This absolutely reinforces that. Security becomes very self-generated and not location-based, right? So it doesn't really matter where you are, right? So, which is great. I mean, I have a smile on my face because there are a lot of Aquarian risings in my life that I love, and I think this is going to be a really nice thing, and I already see these things happening for them, right? I already see the beginnings of this happening. So there's a real psychological arc that's happening for you guys, and we have to look at it through that lens because I do evolutionary astrology, which is, the psychology of astrology. So early in the month, financial review, looking at your money, emotional tension, and shared resources could be coming up. Could be a little bit of discomfort there. Awareness of dependency patterns could be happening. Now, mid-month, that lunar eclipse releases entanglements. Jupiter direct improves your work stability. So very nice energy there. With it going direct in the sixth house, I mean, a lot of you are going to be getting a job opportunity, a leveling up, or a realization having to do with work that's very supportive. And then by the end of the month, that solar eclipse, it's going to be planting a seed in some sort of new direction that's going to drive some kind of new income. For many of you, identity confidence strengthens. You're just going to be feeling like a better version of yourself. Now, Aquarius, you guys often value independence intellectually, right? It's very intellectual for you. But sometimes financial or emotional entanglements contradict that independence, right? Um, Maybe it's because of responsibilities, or maybe it's because of a business or a marriage or whatever it is. This month is going to teach you that independence requires financial clarity and self-worth requires boundaries. Shared power has to be mutual. Anything that's really lopsided it's going to dissolve. So you have to stop undervaluing yourself. Now, thing is, I'm explaining this to you as the astrology, but you have to engage in the energy. It's not just going to do it for you. I hope you understand that, okay? But stop undervaluing yourself, because when you do, your income strengthens, your partnerships rebalance, communication sharpens, identity deepens, you become a lot more aware and clear about who you are and what it is that you want, and really acknowledging and respecting that about yourself, right? This is an empowerment energy that's rooted in value and not rebellion, Aquarius, okay? More value, right? And realizing the value that you do bring to the table. All right, my friends. So that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye. Hi, Pisces. I hope you guys are doing great. We got a lot going on in your first house and your second house. Very personal. Woo, we got to have a lot going on. In that first house, we have Ascendant, Vesta, North Node, Mercury, Mars, Pallas Athena. We have Kronos. And then in your second house, we have Saturn and the Sun and Neptune and Venus and Aries and Chiron. Oh, there's a lot. So let me just give you what all of that means. First of all, this is a month of identity rebirth and really defining, I guess I want to say, defining your boundaries in a different way. Because this is one of the most defining months of the entire eclipse cycle, between now and like the fall, because it does activate that first house self and that seventh house partnership. So this is the axis that's being activated of you and other, like self and other, identity, your identity versus how you are in relationship, autonomy, and the path that you're walking on versus accommodation and how you might need to accommodate other people, right? In marriage, relationships, in work, whatever it is, your personal truth versus projection, right? On other people, or what other people might project onto you. So you're not just changing circumstances this month, you're changing who you are within those circumstances, which is more long lasting, right? If you think about it. Now, this Pisces eclipse in your first house governs obviously your personality, your physical body, your identity, your self-expression, your independence, and how other people perceive you, and the version of yourself that you give them until they get to know who you really are, which would be your sun sign, right? So a solar eclipse in that first house is a rebirth marker for sure. And this can manifest as changing, for many of you, changing your appearance, starting some sort of new personal direction, or redefining how you present yourself to people, like your clothes, your hair, maybe changing how you do your makeup, whatever it is, reclaiming autonomy. Because that first house is very much about autonomy. Like, this is my life, that I'm on this path and I'm walking, and you're, stepping into visibility. So a lot of times you guys are very highly adaptive. You're very sensitive to other people's needs. You are. We know that about you, right? And this eclipse says you are allowed to define yourself, not just respond to others. You're allowed to do that. Psychologically, you may feel simultaneously exposed while you also feel empowered, which can be very exciting. Because old versions of yourself are actively dissolving right now, Pisces. They just are. Especially identities built around sacrifice or emotional accommodation, where you just always, either giving in or, doing what other people need you to do. So you begin to form a more, defined self-concept. this month, and it's very real for you. Now that Virgo eclipse, which is happening in that seventh of marriage and long-term partners and contracts and one-on-one dynamics and open adversaries and your doctors, and it could even be represent someone that you're in a legal entanglement with, right? The person who you would be in a legal situation with. It also rules your energetic output at work each day, right? But with that Virgo energy in there, that can create like an overanalysis in relationships, or a situation where you're trying to fix a partner, or you feel responsible for a relationship harmony. Hyper awareness of flaws at the same time, right? When the South Node eclipse signals the culmination or the release, right? So what does that look like in reality? For a lot of you, it could be the ending of a relationship, or at least the resetting of boundaries. If it's something that's a little more durable, under that. But there's certainly a redefining of expectations and realizing the imbalance in relationship and completing some sort of karmic partnership cycle. I mean, you just are. You're finishing it. So psychologically, you see where you've over accommodated or over managed other people. You see it really, really clearly this month. And this eclipse is asking, who are you without this relationship role? Without being wife, without being worker, without being daughter or sister or mother, whatever it is, who are you under all of that? And then with that first house, seventh house again, when it's hitting that axis, you can't maintain an identity that exists solely in response to other people. So you know yourself better than anybody. So if you know that you've been, prioritizing harmony over being authentic and real and honest about how you feel, or if you've been suppressing your needs and how you really feel about a person and or a situation, if you feel like you've been losing yourself in partnership, if you've been avoiding confrontation just to not like ruffle the feathers, this month is going to be really fixing that for you, because one of a couple of things can happen. A relationship that you have can evolve to meet that new identity, or it dissolves because it can't. Promises are going to be like a cup with a bunch of holes in the bottom of it. It's just not going to work. The promises it's not going to work. Either way, you win here. You end up emerging a lot more defined, having to do with your sense of self. Now, we also have that Saturn conjuncting Neptune in Aries in your second house there, which of course has to do with income and assets and self-esteem and values and your financial stability and your personal boundaries. So Saturn brings pruning, right? He prunes, he brings realism. He brings responsibility, and Neptune dissolves illusions around second house matters. So around money and around worth. So together, here your financial habits must mature, and you see where you've been undervaluing yourself. Boundaries around money strengthen, value systems become a lot more clear to you, and you may realize that you've been giving a lot more than you've been receiving. This transit absolutely grounds your identity rebirth, and it prevents you from redefining yourself while remaining financially or emotionally overextended. Like if you're just giving, you're not going to, it's not going to be, it's not, it can't fly anymore. Financial realism supports your psychological stability here in a huge way. Now, Jupiter finally stations direct March 10th, right? So give him a minute to come out of the retrograde. So as the month goes, he becomes a lot more benefic, right, for you in the fifth house. So that fifth house, again, having to do with children, creative expression, romance, pleasure, play, your authentic joy, monetizable talents, having your own business, all those good things. So once he goes direct, he's very protective, very nurturing. So this retrograde season may have brought, with Jupiter retrograde, reflection on creative projects or romantic reassessment or emotional vulnerability around your children, some sort of challenges having to do with your kids as well. But when Jupiter goes direct, things start flowing. Romance softens, joy returns, creative flow increases, confidence and self-expression grows. Things can become a little easier for your children if your child is dealing with something. And this supports that first house rebirth, right? In a beautiful way, because you are rediscovering what actually makes you happy, Pisces. I mean, separate from, relational obligations, what makes you happy. Now, we do have that Uranus energy still in Taurus in the third house, but at the very end, right? He's getting ready to go into your fourth house, but he does have like a whole half of his body is in Gemini at this point, but he's starting out the month at 27 degrees, will be to 28 degrees by the end of the month. And this is a, sudden insight, speaking very boldly in that third house, changing communication style, breaking free from outdated thinking. Remember, this is the last month that he's going to be in there ever. He will never be in your third house again, and he's been in there since 2018. So you want to think back to 2018 to now and think about how much you've changed in that third house arena, having to do with the way that you communicate, the way that you learn, contracts, your thinking, your siblings, your neighbors, your neighborhoods, right? Uranus can bring a lot of moving, right? A lot of changes. So your voice becomes less filtered with Uranus in there. And this reinforces again, the eclipse in that first house. So the energies are working quite nicely together because it's in a sextile to that energy. Now, Pluto is still in Aquarius and will be for the next 19 years. And this is in your subconscious. So let's see how this is working on your subconscious, working on hidden fears, self-sabotage, spiritual death, that psychological shadow. Pluto there brings a deep inner transformation. A lot of you have been really feeling it, especially over the last year and a half, confronting suppressed patterns, going through an emotional detox, spiritually waking up. This month's identity rebirth is very much supported by this deep subconscious clearing that Pluto is providing for you in that 12th house. So you're not just changing externally, you're actually purging internally. So very nice energy there. So early in the month, again, you're going to feel this relationship tension and this identity uncertainty and this financial clarity starting to emerge. But by mid-month, we have that lunar eclipse is going to be resetting partnership dynamics. Jupiter direct ultimately ends up restoring joy. And that eclipse at the end, closer in late in the month, the solar eclipse activates a personal rebirth, right? Which will be nice because it's going to be very nice to help you strengthen boundaries, right? But you guys often do survive by being very empathetic and very adaptable and merging with other people and avoiding conflict. Like that's just who you are, right? But that merging, Pisces, can blur your identity. It can. And this month is teaching you that compassion requires boundaries and that love requires self-definition. And harmony is a two-way street and it requires honesty because you're stepping into a more defined version of yourself, and that version that you're evolving into, you're going to be a lot more clear on what your worth is and speaking clearly and loving without dissolving, loving without any self-erasure, and being able to set boundaries without guilt because maybe you've been able to do it, but not without guilt. So, this is a big month where everybody is really just kind of collectively asking, like, what has to be surrendered here? Old belief systems, control patterns, unhealthy routines, kind of identity masks, what part of that identity has to go? What part of it has to dissolve? Really looking at where we're all over controlling and what new spiritual direction is forming in order to replace that. But March of this year, definitely some karmic editing is going on. It's not really about dramatic chaos. It's subtly destiny is turning and it's closing cycles very quietly and opening doors that feel guided, rather than forced. So that is what I have for you, my friends. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. See you next time. Bye.